and it's a terrible thing for the world, really.
How have you spoken to any of your men? Do you know how they're reacting to this? Because emotionally, this must be so incredibly difficult.
Well, there are a lot of them, but they've never seen bodies like this. I mean, the bodies all over. The great thing is when they find somebody that's alive, like the 5 firemen that they just found a little while ago. So that's the great thing, and that's what they're all striving for. But generally speaking, that's not the case. So they are working very, very hard, but it's a very depressing situation for these folks.
As you walked around and as you saw the piles of rubble, there are thousands of families out there who are hoping that someone might be in a pocket somewhere, still alive, still breathing, waiting to be dug up. As you assess that damage from your perspective, do you believe?
I would certainly say it's not possible. Certainly it's give up that they probably were looking to do a couple dug out. So they're probably are
a whole different scale. It's like a whole different.
They have to rebuild, not necessarily, and we have to rebuild to be better.
Just finally, can you tell me emotionally, as you walked around, we've heard some of the stories from the firemen. They're so exhausted, and mentally and physically. What was it like for you personally to go in and see all of what you saw?
Well, it was amazing to see it. It was a very depressing scene, but I'll tell you what, you really can take heart. These firemen and policemen and the construction workers equally, the courage they have is unbelievable. I mean, they're working, digging out and lifting up steel, and above them you have 55-story buildings that are very possibly going to be pouring down on them any minute. Nothing's wrong. I mean, they're amazing.
John, as we were in that tape, groups of rescuers were coming over here, gathering, and the trucks have just started to roll out. Within 5 minutes, they will be at ground zero starting their work. Back to you.
Monica Novotny in Lower Manhattan. Monica, thank you very much. We have another bit of information that comes to us from Arlington, Virginia, and the Arlington County fire captain says they have a signal from the transponder of the black box from the plane that crashed into the Pentagon. Once again, they apparently have heard the transponder signal of the black box from the plane that crashed into the Pentagon. And I want to talk about that with Joe Cantamesa. He's a retired special agent who worked with the FBI, who worked with investigators in both the World Trade Center bombing in '93 and the crash of TWA Flight 800. And Joe, what does it mean to get the black box in this case? Much?
Actually, in that instance, we'll get, at the very least, the flight data as the exact path of the plane, but more importantly, the cockpit voice recorder will hopefully be intact. It's a late model aircraft, and they should capture all of the cockpit audio up until the point it was either disabled or crashed.
And so, in addition to once you get the black box, I mean, the black box is what I was saying is it's really a small part of this entire investigation. I mean, they have some information about what happened on board already, right?
Well, yes, John, what really happens is a lot of small pieces come together for a big puzzle. The significant work that's being done at the sources of the hijackings clearly will be complemented by any audio information they're able to capture off of that cockpit voice recorder.
Talk, if you would, about the other investigation. What we're seeing is in many parts of the country, in Boston, in Providence, Rhode Island, in Virginia, in Arkansas, in Florida, little pieces of the puzzle coming together. Are you surprised at how quickly this seems to be happening?
22 years with the FBI, I'm not surprised, I'm pleased. I can tell you for a fact that the FBI is the only organization that has the resources, the structure, and the drive to hit so many places simultaneously, collect every bit of information possible, and with a little bit of good luck, guidance, and management, pull it all together in a timely fashion.
The disturbing part of this story is, though, as we heard from Andrea Mitchell, there may be other hijackers in the United States right now, and potential hijackers, people who could fly airplanes.
Well, clearly the identification of who was involved, of course, in the hijackings, but more importantly, the support groups, their linkages to other individuals or other cells or other organizations and other cells are really what this investigation is all about.
All right, Joe Catamesa. Joe, thank you for your expertise, and thanks for being with us and waiting patiently to get on. In the meantime, a couple of bits of information from Lower Manhattan. Word, a ray of hope, that some 6 people have been pulled from the rubble alive. There is also a congressional delegation. Congressional leaders are headed to the Pentagon. They're going to hold a news conference sometime later on this afternoon. We are told that stock trading will begin on Monday, and the investigation into all of this continues. I'm John Siegenthaler reporting. You're watching live NBC News coverage of Attack on America.
953.
This is an NBC News special report. Attack on America. Here is Tom Brokaw.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we resume our coverage, our non-stop coverage on this NBC station of Attack on America, you are looking at the lower end of Manhattan, where it has been a day of some confusion and also some joy, because some firefighters who were working in rescue efforts there trapped in a landslide when one of those destabilized buildings came down on them. They were able to get out of there. There are other reports as well that some additional firefighters may have been rescued, so we're trying to track that down. But let us just bring you up to date on the most relevant developments in the afternoon hours. They now believe that they've gotten a signal from the black box of the airliner that crashed into the Pentagon. That's according to an Arlington County firefighting captain. Arlington County is in Virginia, and it has been that department that's been responsible for extinguishing the fire and coordinating a fair amount of the rescue efforts that are going on at the Pentagon, although the military is involved as well. You'll remember that that's the plane that lifted off from Dulles Airport and then circled once over the Pentagon, around the Capitol, across the mall, maybe even it might have been headed at one point for the White House. Certainly at the White House, they believe that the White House was a target based on credible evidence that they developed. President Bush today, a very strong statement describing this as the first war of the 21st century. He said it will be the focus of my administration. At the same time, Secretary of State Colin Powell, directed by the president, is putting together a worldwide coalition of like-minded countries and countries that not necessarily have been in the camp with the United States, trying to organize a political coalition so when they do make a military strike against whoever is responsible, that there is international solidarity as best as it can be organized. So that is the situation at this hour in Washington and in New York and around the world. The investigation continues as well. Attorney General John Ashcroft says 18 hijackers were involved on the airplanes, but there are a number of their associates who are still at large, although it's important to point out that no one in the highest offices of the federal law enforcement agencies, no one has any evidence that there is another plan now that is in operation in any form or fashion. But plainly, these hijackers did have help on the ground and across America, and they're attempting to round them up. That's the lower end of Manhattan. We want to go to NBC's Ann Curry now to see what information she's been able to develop on these stories about some additional rescues. Ann?
Tom, well, first let me tell you there's been a development just a short time ago, within a matter of minutes. The south edge of the South Tower began to move. I don't know if you can zoom in behind me and see the structure that's standing there, those long pieces of metal. Very difficult to see there, but if you can see them far in the distance, those long pieces of metal in the middle, about the middle of your screen, just a very short time ago, those began to shift, and we actually had a producer on the scene, Eric Ortner, who Eric, you saw this shift, this movement.
We were about 150 feet away from the side of the mound by the South Tower. All of a sudden, we saw a couple hundred rescue workers running off the mound like ants coming off of an anthill. Before
Did the bullhorn sound as well?
Bullhorn did not sound yet. We saw the metal part of the South Tower, the shell, the frame, slightly shift inward, and then the horns blew, and it was about a marathon of several hundred people just running, grabbing everyone they could and dragging them down Church Street.
And you just ran down here, and that's the reason why you're out of breath.
Ran right here.
As far as you could tell, was there any landslide, any yelling of people actually who were caught in this movement?
To be honest, the first move was to get out of the way.
All right,
and let the people help who need to be helped.
All right, thank you very much for telling us about that. We're also going to want to tell you that this danger is exactly the area where there was a landslide earlier today, and a number of firefighters were caught under the rubble. And we have pictures that we shot from exactly in that location, as close as you can get to that South Tower, that we shot earlier today, showing you the rescue of these firefighters. One was rescued just about 2:30 this afternoon. There was a crowd of firefighters and police officers standing nearby. Somebody put their arms up saying they found him. They hauled him out on a stretcher and took him into an ambulance. People were cheering all around. It looks from the scene that there were hundreds of rescuers on the scene watching this happen. So happy to see that this firefighter was pulled out alive. And this rescue happened a matter of hours after two other firefighters were rescued. Rescue personnel were rescued, one after another, both of whom were caught again, as I said, in the landslide that happened today. This brings to very much to point how dangerous the situation is down here. The buildings are incredibly unstable. The wreckages of the three buildings that have gone down are incredibly unstable, and there is also instability that we can see in some of the surrounding buildings, at least looking at the blown out windows, but also of buildings 5 and 6. We can see from being on scene that there is some serious structural damage, where you can see several floors up, bent metal that is supposed to be part of the very foundation, the structure of the building. So we really had a grim reminder just a few minutes ago of just how dangerous these rescuers are, the dangerous conditions these rescuers are working in, trying to find anyone they can still find, hoping to find still alive. So at least the good news is that these three have already been taken to the hospital, Tom.
All right, thanks very much. NBC's Ann Curry in Lower Manhattan bringing us up to date on the latest rescue efforts there. The rescuers are having to rescue the rescuers because a number of them were trapped today when one of the buildings did give away, and there is, as you can see, still a world of rubble down there from the collapse of the twin towers of the World Trade Center, and also 7 World Trade Center, that 40-story building that came down later. One Liberty Plaza, which is a major office building in that area, is very unstable at the top, that we're told. Mayor Rudolph Giuliani has said today that they now have what they're describing as an official estimate of the people missing. It could go much higher. They're saying more than 4,700 people are missing in the collapse of the World Trade Center. And one of them is the husband of Stephanie Lang Fisher. Stephanie Lang Fisher is an employee of American Online, AOL. Her husband was in a meeting at the World Trade Center, and she joins us now here in New York. I know this is a very difficult time for you, but like so many other families, you have printed up a flyer, Stephanie, of your husband so that everyone can see what he looks like, because there was great chaos down there. We're going to put that on the screen now, and we're also going to put on the telephone numbers that you've attached to the bottom. If there's anyone who has seen Andrew Fisher, who's been missing from 1 World Trade Center, the 106th floor, those are the numbers that they should call. Stephanie, when was the last time that you heard from your husband, and what was he doing at the World Trade Center?
The last time I heard from him was I came into work and the big screen TV was on, and I walked past it and I saw that there was a hole in the first tower. And I made my way to my desk, and the caller ID showed my husband's cell phone. So I picked it up, and it was him, and he just, I said, you know, what's up, what's going on? And he said, I love you, I love you, I love you. I want you to know that, and I don't know what's going to happen. And I said, well, where are you? Where are you? I don't understand. And he said, I'm at the World Trade Center. And I said, what are you doing there? What, you know, what, I mean, where are you in it? I don't know, I'm not following you. He said, I'm on the 106th floor at the conference. And
what kind of a conference was it, Stephanie?
It was the Risk Waters Symposium, and my husband works for Imagine Software, and he was with his colleague Peter Mardikian, and they were there together. They were the only two from Imagine there. And once again, it was the Riskwater Symposium, and all of a sudden, the other explosion happened, and I heard my husband say, Andrew said, "Oh my God, what was that?" And I said, "Andrew, the other building just exploded." And I said, I'm here, I love you," and I couldn't get through to him, and the phone just, it went dead.
So he was there for a meeting that was scheduled, but he was not a regular...
He does not work in that building. He works in the Woolworth building.
And at 106 floors, he was well above where that first airplane went in, American Airlines Flight 111.
That's correct.
And
but, you know, he actually said to me, "I don't know what's going on. They're not telling us anything. We don't know where to go. The stairwells are full of smoke. We don't know what to do."
And what about the room in which he was in? Was that also filled with smoke at the time?
All I heard from him was, "The stairwells are full of smoke. We cannot go into the stairwells." And what I did hear was also reports that they were being told to make their way up. This is from someone else's husband.
Onto the ceiling?
I guess so, up to another floor because of the smoke.
Did you continue to watch television?
I did.
And I know this is very difficult. Let's try to get through this together. What did you think when you saw that building come down?
I thought, I hope that if he is at peace and it happened to him and he's gone, I hope the smoke got to him first before he felt any pain of anything falling. And that's the first thing that came to mind. Just please, God, you know, let him be at peace if this is what happened. But now I really just don't know. You hear these stories of people miraculously making it out, and at this point now I am not losing hope. I've done everything I possibly can. I've contacted missing persons, filled out the case numbers. His case number is P0327. Peter Mardikian's is P0328. And everyone out there, I feel, has just all the information I can possibly do, especially being on the air right now. And I'm so thankful to be here. And I'm just thankful to the city of New York.
Stephanie, just tell us briefly, if you can, a little something about your husband and how long you've been married and how you met each other.
4 years. My best friend is his sister, and that's how we met.
Well, we wish you all the best. We know that this is a very difficult time, and of course, not just your co-workers and this city are behind you, but all across the country, everyone is hoping that there will be a happy conclusion to all of these stories. So we do wish you the best. Andrew Fisher, missing, and Stephanie joined us here today. Stephanie, thanks for coming by.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Let's go to NBC's Rahima Ellis now. Rahima has been dealing with any number of these kinds of stories today as well. Rahima?
Tom, there are literally thousands of stories like that, and many of them are standing here on the corner. We're at 26 and Lexington on the east side of Manhattan. Across the street is what's called an armory. It's called now a grief center, and in fact, it might better be put a hope center. People are coming here with lots of hope. They're being told to give information about their loved ones. I have a few people I just want to talk to. Shirley, let me ask you. You're looking for Eric, and who is Eric to you?
Eric is my brother-in-law.
And tell me something about Eric.
Oh, Eric is a wonderful person. He worked for Cantor Fitzgerald on the 105th floor of the WTC building. He has 2 small children, Jacob and Allison, a beautiful wife, Blanca. Just the guy that the best guy that you could ever know.
When did you talk to him last?
She spoke to him Tuesday morning at 8:15. He called every day to make sure the kids were off to school, wish them a good day. That's the type of person Eric is.
And you filled out information about him in the armory, in the grief center?
Yes, we did. And we have called hospitals. I have been on the websites for Cantor Fitzgerald. I have been talking to different people, just trying to get information as to, you know, what's going on. But I know Eric is going to make it because our faith is going to help us, and Eric is a very, very strong individual.
I called it a hope center. You are still hopeful?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. This guy is going to be home.
Let me ask this gentleman here. Who is this that you're holding a picture of?
This is my brother, Ty Moore. Worked on the 92nd floor, Car Futures in Tower 1. There's about 85 people up there working in and around his desk, and none of them have been heard from. At 10:14, there was an email sent via his colleague's Palm Pilot to his wife, saying that everything was okay, but that there was smoke and they couldn't get out of the building. Sweetest kid in the world. He doesn't really, you know, follow politics and things like that. He avoids confrontation at all costs. He's the best big brother. He's a great son. He's just very loving. If you've heard anything about him or anyone at Carr.
You filled out information on your brother already, and your mom did, right?
Yes.
What do you do from this point on?
We just keep hoping, you know, we just keep going around, put his picture up, and, you know, I mean, we have to eventually start hearing something, you know. People have to just keep the faith and hope, and...
That's exactly what everybody here is doing, Tom. One last woman I want to talk with. Tell me who you are.
Well, unfortunately, we lost our signal from down there, but as I say, that story is being multiplied thousands of times over here in the city of New York. Officially, more than 4,700 people are listed as missing in the rubble of the World Trade Center, the collapse of the two towers. There were, and the numbers are very hard to reconcile here, there could have been as many as 20,000 people at work at that hour. On any given day, as many as 50,000 people are working in the Trade Tower, or what was once the World Trade Center. And on a lot of busy days, as many as 90,000 people passed through there. But because it was 8:45 in the morning, it was not likely filled to capacity. They have recovered very few bodies at this point, and there could be thousands more trapped. We hope that some of them are alive, but with every passing hour, of course, that is a diminishing hope. And all across Lower Manhattan, families, just like the ones you saw now, are going from hospital to hospital. They're going to the Red Cross. There has been set up now a place where they can register officially the name of their loved one or their friend. And that is a process that is draining the city emotionally, as you might expect. But at the same time, people are lining up in solidarity with those families, and they're adding their own hopes to those who have people who could be trapped in the rubble, or who certainly were in the World Trade Center when they came down. We have organized here at NBC News what we're calling the NBC News Terrorism Task Force, putting our very best reporters on it to keep you up to date on the investigation and what is going on. NBC's Andrea Mitchell is a member of that task force. She's been tracking for us the diplomatic efforts and the part of the investigation as well at the highest levels. Andrea, do you have anything new at this hour?
Well, we do know that Colin Powell did talk for 10 minutes on the phone with the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and State Department officials claim that they did get a promise of support from Pakistan, although those promises have not been fulfilled in the past. So they're waiting to see whether Pakistan, neighboring Afghanistan, of course, delivers on this promise of support. There is a worldwide effort to build a coalition. They're talking to Russia, to China, to all of the major players around the world. They have NATO support, which is unprecedented. We are also told by a top U.S. official that there are other terrorists at large in the United States and outside the United States from this same cell trying to reorganize potentially against American targets, and that these others who are still at large do include trained pilots, potentially more hijackers at large. So this is not an all clear, they say. That's a direct quote. The all clear sign has, the all clear signal has not been called yet. This is not over. So pretty ominous warnings. The president virtually declaring a war against terror today. The problem, of course, Tom, is that the U.S. is fighting a war against what is virtually a holy jihad. Osama bin Laden, who Colin Powell, for the first time publicly on camera, acknowledged today is the leading suspect. Osama bin Laden has been an enemy, a sworn enemy of the United States since 1991, when he took deep offense at the fact that Americans were, in his view, culturally invading the holy sites of Saudi Arabia, Mecca and Medina, in the run-up to the Gulf War. And ever since, even though he was trained partially with U.S. support in Afghanistan in the 80s, in the fight of Afghanistan and the U.S. Against Russia, since then he has been an avowed enemy, an enemy number one of the United States, first striking against Americans in Somalia, and later in various other locations around the Middle East. He's indicted and being sought for the embassy bombings, and has a pattern of behavior that includes disappearing after an attack, threatening before attack, but not taking credit afterwards. There seems to be a relationship between Afghanistan and bin Laden, an arrangement, if you will, where he will not take credit so that they can have plausible deniability and claim that he's not a terrorist, just a guest in their state. He is providing money and manpower so that the Taliban regime could win control over most of that country against their enemies in a civil war. And it is an implicit relationship that is hardly plausible, because there is no question that the Taliban are sponsoring him. Tom?
All right, thank you very much, NBC's Andrea Mitchell in Washington. We're going to go to Jerusalem now, and Bibi Netanyahu is the former Prime Minister of Israel, and he joins us from there, where it is already nightfall, obviously. Mr. Netanyahu, Secretary of State Colin Powell has also been in touch with the Israeli government, Shimon Peres, the Foreign Minister, and Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. He said he also talked today with Yasser Arafat, trying to achieve some kind of a stand down, if not a complete ceasefire, because there have been more episodes of violence in your country, exchanges between the PLO and the Israeli military. What are the chances of that happening in the context of this terrorist attack in America?
Well, I think that it's not exchanges, it's attacks, terror attacks in which innocent civilians, innocent Israelis are killed by Palestinian terrorists, including suicide bombers. It's important to understand that Yasser Arafat's PLO land, if you will, the PLO authority and its territory, is simply a branch of this larger terrorist tree. There is a terrorist empire, a network of terrorists that includes, as Andrea Mitchell said, the Afghanistan and the Taliban part of it. It includes Iran, it includes Iraq, a few other Middle Eastern regimes, Arafat's own Palestinian Authority, which harbors groups that have cooperated and cooperate today with bin Laden, Fatah, Arafat's own movement, the Islamic Jihad, the Hamas terrorist movement, and Hezbollah in Lebanon. This is what I may call the terror network. And therefore, while it is vital that bin Laden, as it appears that he is the one who perpetrated this, should be attacked and eliminated without a doubt, it is important to understand that he's only the squadron leader who dispatched the kamikaze pilots. You have to get at the aircraft carriers. You won Midway, you won the Pacific War when you sunk the carriers. You didn't go after the individual kamikazes alone. You went after the facilities that enabled their operation. And in this case, I think President Bush is absolutely right in saying that it is not only the terrorist organizations that have to be wiped out. You have to dismantle the whole terror regimes that make this possible.
You're not suggesting, are you, Bibi Netanyahu, that the United States in its war on terrorism goes directly after the PLO as well? Can you hear me, Bibi? Oh, I'm sorry that we've lost the audio at that time. Some very provocative statements from Bibi Netanyahu, who is the former prime minister in Israel and is still aligned with the current government. Let's go to NBC's David Bloom now in Lower Manhattan. David?
Tom, I want to clarify what's been a very confusing couple of minutes here. The situation is this. The south side of the South Tower of the World Trade Center is, authorities tell us, in imminent danger of collapsing. That is why the horn sounded. It is not, to the best of our knowledge, any other building than that. Here's what makes this so chilling, Tom, is this. The rescue workers who surround the south side of the South Tower have all evacuated. They literally ran for their lives, fearing that the building was about to collapse. But Tom, there are other rescue workers, we're told, by police officers who literally just came running to our location. Other rescue workers are on top of that pile of rubble where they are hearing the tapping of a woman trapped inside. They say that those rescue workers have been there for some time, trying to get through the rubble, hearing this woman tapping. Now, we've got some pictures of an earlier rescue of a firefighter who was trapped in the rubble there from an earlier collapse. We know of at least 3 firefighters rescued today. The reason why I'm showing you these pictures now is because this is the same location where the tapping is going on from someone trapped inside, and the area which has just been cleared out, save for the rescue workers who are on top of the rubble. This structure, we're told, both by people who've just come out from inside and from our own producers who've been in there, is about to collapse, or they're certainly fearing that it's about to collapse. That's why they've sounded the alarm, ordered the massive evacuation, except these workers on top of the rubble are staying put, trying to save this one life of this one woman trapped inside.
David, how do they know it's a woman?
Tom, I got to tell you, I don't know. I asked the gentleman the same question. I think they're in some kind of contact with her, either the sound of her voice, or they hear the tapping, or she's reaching out to them with her voice. I honestly don't know the answer to that question, Tom.
And we don't know whether she was one of the original rescue workers who may have been trapped in the rubble when the building came down, or may have been someone working in the building when it came down.
That's absolutely right. The indications that we're getting, Tom, is that this might be someone from earlier, but again, it's only that. And keep in mind, this same spot, keep in mind that they don't really know, because remember, the third firefighter that was pulled from that rubble literally reached up his fingers and touched another firefighter when they realized that there was someone down. So there are actually people trapped inside that they simply don't know are there, except for this tapping that they're now hearing.
All right. Thank you very much, NBC's David Bloom in Lower Manhattan. We're going to go to General Norman Schwarzkopf. As everyone knows, he was the commander of the Allied forces in Operation Desert Storm. General, we just had on Bibi Netanyahu, is the former prime minister of Israel. As you know, he is a man who takes a very strong position against the PLO and terrorism. He said it's not enough for the United States to get Osama bin Laden. He described him as a squadron leader. He said, you've got to sink the aircraft carriers. He used the metaphors from World War II. You won in the Pacific because in the Battle of Midway, you sunk the big carriers of the Japanese fleet. And he was suggesting that we'll have to go after wider organizations, and even suggesting that we'll have to go after the PLO. That changes the equation considerably.
Well, you know, obviously, he's correct that the bin Laden organization is just one of many terrorist organizations. I'm not too sure that any of us know that there is a central direction of all terrorist activities. An awful lot of those organizations operate independently. If we get bin Laden, you've got one of them, and probably one of the most prominent. But as he said, quite correctly, there are several others out there.
Were you encouraged today by the statement of the Pakistani government?
Yes, yeah. But don't forget, the Pakistanis, some of them participated in Desert Storm. They were friends, good friends, I would say, when I was the commander of Central Command. Obviously, since then, there have been a lot of changes, and they're not as good a friend, but I was very encouraged by their comments, and I sincerely hope that they follow through.
Let's talk in the broadest strokes about military operations. If we do have to go into that part of the world and we need a land base, which country makes the most sense?
That's a tough question. The country that makes the most sense is the one that lets us come in there and operate freely out of it.
Do you think that Pakistan conceivably could do that?
I think it'd be very tough for the Pakistanis to do it. I'm not too sure that they have the facilities, the extensive facilities that we need to do the job.
What about?
You know, it could.
Go ahead.
You started to say what about?
Well, what about north of there? What about going into a place like Uzbekistan?
Could work well. You know, it's one of those things. Don't forget, in Desert Storm, we operated primarily out of the Gulf states, but at the same time we were operating out of Turkey and the states north of Iraq. So, you know, the more the merrier as far as that is concerned. You know, as many bases you can get, you want to use, because you want to build up your logistics supplies. You want to be able to hit them from all sides, and so, you know, I wouldn't discount anybody. I'd like to have as many. You know, we would obviously like to have as many bases as we could possibly get.
And as Andrea Mitchell was just reminding us, it was the U.S. presence in Saudi Arabia during Operation Desert Storm, in which we were trying to save that country from being overrun by Iraq and liberate Kuwait, but it was the U.S. presence in there that so enraged Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, but you also got to remember that Osama bin Laden was a recipient of U.S. aid in his battles in Afghanistan, so he's being rather selective in deciding when he likes us and when he doesn't like us.
All right, thank you very much, General Norman Schwarzkopf. We're back now with Bibi Netanyahu, the former Israeli Prime Minister and the former ambassador to the United Nations here in the United States, a very familiar figure, of course, to American television audiences. Mr. Netanyahu, I just want to pick up on what you were saying when you were talking metaphorically about aircraft carriers and the United States having to get them if they're going to win in this war against terrorism. You began that statement by talking about the connection between the PLO and terrorism. You're not suggesting that the United States is going to have to go after the PLO as well.
No, I think we can handle that. I mean, but President Bush said correctly that you have to root out not only the terrorist organizations, but also the regimes that harbor them and give them safe haven. As a point of fact, Arafat's part of this terrorist empire is one of the big factories of suicide bombers. I mean, he's got kindergarten camps, summer camps that teach little Palestinian children to become suicide bombers. So he's preparing not only the suicide killers of today, but the suicide pilots of tomorrow. But that is an issue I think that we can handle. The main point that I want to stress is that we don't approach this as a small problem of Israel or a small problem of America vis-a-vis bin Laden, because what we have here is something far worse. You know, in 1995, I wrote a book called Fighting Terrorism, and I said that if we don't arrest the tide of Islamic militant terrorism, militant Islamic terrorism, then the next thing that will be is not a car bomb in the World Trade Center, but a nuclear bomb. Now, it wasn't a nuclear bomb. It was a 350-ton conventional bomb. But I'm sure you don't doubt, and nobody who listens to us now doubts, that if these maniacal movements and the regimes that support them develop nuclear weapons, they will use them. And then you're talking about not the horrendous casualties. And by the way, it breaks the heart just to listen to the stories that you gave earlier. Now imagine that the horrific toll, as horrific as it is today, would pale in comparison to hundreds of thousands or millions of casualties. What is important to understand is that you have to dismantle the entire terror empire, and especially before its main practitioners, the terror states of Iran and Iraq, acquire nuclear weapons. And this, I think, has been a wake-up call from hell. It is telling us, you have the power now to act, summon the will, because the terrorists have the will to destroy America, to destroy freedom, to destroy all of America's allies and all the democracies, Israel being simply on the front line. They have the will, but they don't have the power.
But simultaneously, to get back to my original question, should the United States become more deeply involved in trying to arrange a temporary truce, at least in your part of the world, between the PLO and your government?
Well, it's not a question of a truce. Arafat's true colors were revealed for those who want to see, and it's caused a massive shift of opinion in Israel. I would say unprecedented unanimity, even from the most conciliatory Israelis, because they realize now that he doesn't want a state next to Israel. He wants to eradicate Israel and uses terror to sap our will and hit us. In many ways, what you have here are two parallels. Osama bin Laden represents an Islamic militancy that wants to reverse history. They never accepted the rise of the West and its primacy in the world and the retreat of Islam. They want to reverse that, and therefore they have to destroy America in their fantasy. And to do that, they will attack America again and again. They have a constant intention. They may not be able to destroy America today, but they think they can bring it to its knees, and once they acquire nuclear weapons, they'll destroy America. Make no mistake about it. Yasser Arafat is more modest in his goals as part of this family. He wants to merely destroy Israel. But we have to get the entire terror network when there is still time. And nothing that you will do with Arafat, giving him the hills above Tel Aviv, is not going to make him stop. And he's quite irrelevant in this respect.
Bibi Netanyahu, thanks very much for being with us. Back in this country now, in the skies over America, there are flights again for the first time since Tuesday, when they were suspended. Those flights that were in operation at the time of the hijacking were allowed to go on to their destinations or diverted, but this is the Explorer tracker. You can see the number of flights. This is just the northeastern part of the United States now, the west and the southwest, which gives you some small sense of how crowded America's skies are, because this is a relatively light day. Operations are just still ramping up, as they might say. NBC's Robert Hager. Things going pretty well so far, Bob?
Well, yes and no, but I was going to say on that tracker, to really appreciate that, yeah, you have to remember what it's like on a normal day when there are 4,000 or 5,000 planes in the air, and that whole map would be virtually solid green. So even though that looks like an awful lot of planes, by comparison with a normal day, it's virtually nothing. So it's picking up, but picking up very slowly. A couple of other things going on. Some confusion about just what has been heard at the Pentagon. The Arlington Fire Department said first that it had heard what sounded like a pinger noise from one of the black boxes, presumably, at the Pentagon, in the wreckage somewhere, just heard the pinger noise. Aviation sources dispute that. They say that, first of all, the pinger is designed to be heard underwater only, although possibly the water put on a fire might set it off. At this point, anyway, they sound very skeptical, and they have not heard from the scene, from their own people, the NTSB, that they have a black box, or even, I shouldn't say have the black box, but are picking up the noise from a black box. A couple other points about black boxes. The flight data recorder really wouldn't be very helpful in an investigation like this. It just tells how the plane turned and so forth. What you need is the cockpit voice recorder. So if you find a black box, it's the cockpit voice recorder that investigators would want, and then they'd have to hope that it hadn't been disabled. Let's see, what else? The Transportation Secretary, Norman Mineta, had said this morning that he was hoping to get military people from the Army, Delta Force people, to put on planes as disguised passengers, but they would be armed, in other words, to supplement the Sky Marshal program. Well, now the Department of Transportation says that the Secretary spoke in error, that it had been discussed, but then they ran up against legal problems about using the military for civilian enforcement purposes, and that idea was abandoned. Both Mineta and the Attorney General Ashcroft have said they do want to expand the Sky Marshal program, but they'll have to get the bodies, that is the people, from someplace else, not from the Army. Otherwise, a lot of people in this country taking alternate transportation. We heard that rent car companies spoke to Alamo, it was, said they were getting 10 times as many requests for bookings as normal. So all the rent car companies having trouble keeping up with demand. Amtrak is reporting double the normal number of passengers, and they had some problems today when they had an accident out in Utah, 6 injured, not serious, but an Amtrak passenger train did hit a freight. Otherwise, as I say, there have been various little bobbles. There was an Alitalia flight coming in to land at San Francisco. 40 minutes out. Really, foreign carriers are not really allowed to land at U.S. airports yet. It was coming in from Canada. They turned it around. It went back to the Canadian border. Then they changed their mind and said, okay, you can land in San Francisco, and it came back. So normal little bobbles on this first day, but things will get back to normal maybe by tomorrow.
All right, thanks very much, NBC's Robert Hager. We want to go to Atlanta's Hartsfield Airport now. Anyone who travels by air knows that that's one of the busiest airports anywhere in the world, and NBC's Frederica Whitfield is there. Where do they stand in Atlanta, Frederica?
Oh, hi there, Tom. Well, travelers and flight crews have been trickling into this airport all day for the couple of dozen scheduled, confirmed outgoing flights here. When the passengers and the flight crews get here, here's some of the very obvious changes in place. They'll find that there is no curbside baggage check-in, just as many of the airports that have opened up for business across the country. They'll find that as soon as they pull up, while the curb stands are still here, they are not open for business. People will have to make their drop-off very quickly and under the watchful eyes of the Atlanta police as well as airport authority officers who are standing here waiting to make sure that the traffic keeps moving. And then once you step inside, passengers will notice that there's a very large cordoned off area in front of the ticket counters for what are expected to be very long lines. All of the airlines are encouraging people, don't just come out here and think that you can get on a flight standby, or perhaps your flight has been diverted. You need to call the airlines or check the websites, make sure that those flights are confirmed. Then when you get out here, you've got to stand in line, and it's likely it could take a 2-hour process. Then, as you proceed toward your concourse here at Atlanta, you're going to find that the security checkpoints are going to take a lot longer. They are checking individuals one by one, checking every bag. No person is being taken for granted. And what we noticed earlier today, we saw a number of Atlanta patrolmen on foot, on their bikes, patrolling the airport here. They've got canines here. Everyone is being checked very thoroughly. And there are very obvious signs, billboards almost, that are up for the passengers, letting them know that the obvious things such as firearms will not be allowed through. the electronic surveillance belt. But in addition to that, even retractable razors, blades are being confiscated, as well as any kind of construction type knives, and even things just like this, as small as a pocket knife. I watched one man come in with a knife just like this, a pocket knife, on his keychain. That was confiscated right away, and all of his bags were checked very thoroughly. So the process is going to take a lot longer for folks. They can't just come to the airport and think that they can make it in time for within 30 minutes to their flight. At least at this airport, it's expected that it's going to be pretty harried like this for at least another 3 days, or at least until the FAA suspends any of these regulations. Back to you, Tom.
All right, thanks very much, NBC's Frederica Whitfield, who is at Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta. You're looking at the southeastern air corridors of the United States as traffic begins slowly in the skies over this country. It begins to get back to some degree of normalcy. In Washington, D.C., they have expanded now the security perimeter around the White House. You'll recall that there was some discussion about removing the blockades that at either end of Pennsylvania Avenue as it runs in front of the White House. Those were put in place after an airplane flew into the White House and after there was a shooting incident on the Pennsylvania Avenue side. Well, now they've decided, obviously, not to remove those blockades, but to expand that safety corridor from 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue, between 17th and Pennsylvania Avenue, between 15th and Pennsylvania Avenue, between Pennsylvania Avenue, 15th and 17th Street West, and E Street between 15th and 17th. That's a considerable chunk of the heart of the nation's capital that will be shut off to vehicular traffic. Only pedestrian traffic will be allowed in there as we continue to have an escalation of the security requirements for everyday life in this country. This after, of course, the most grievous attack on America within the continental United States since the War of 1812. Now let's show you one of the most frenetic places normally in New York, and that is the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It has been closed since Tuesday as well. It will remain closed until Monday. The financial markets have taken an enormous hit, obviously, say nothing of other sectors of the economy. CNBC's Maria Bartiromo joins me now. Are they going to be able to get back to full speed by Monday, Maria?
Well, you know, Tom, I think that most people would like to see the markets open at full capacity, but it really is unlikely. I mean, when you think about just the logistics of getting down to Wall Street and the relief workers there doing their thing and trying to get people out of that rubble, it really does seem quite difficult. Having said that, I think there's a real effort to get business back on track. Today I spoke with a number of brokerage firms that had full houses as far as their people, and they were trying to man the phones, trying to hold clients' hands, and really try to get business back. So I think there will be a big effort, and that obviously will happen Monday.
All right, Maria Bartiromo, thank you very much. By the way, let me just ask you about the New York Stock Exchange. We talked about this yesterday. Any further reading on all of the electronic circuitry? Is it intact?
The electronic circuitry is really not as impacted as just the logistics and getting around the exchange. Dick Grasso today had a meeting at the offices of Credit Suisse First Boston with all of the other CEOs of the major brokerage firms. He really played down that aspect of it and really instead focused on the people and the need to really rescue the people from the rubble.
All right, thank you very much, Maria Bartiromo, who joins us from our studios here in New York because she cannot work from her normal job position, which is on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, but we hope to see her back there by Monday. There are so many poignant personal stories, obviously. We want to share another one with you right now. We want to introduce you to Becky Marchand and Joshua Marchand, mother and son. We're going to talk about Al Marchand, 44 years old, a flight attendant on Flight 175 from Boston to Los Angeles. He would have been 45 years old in November. He was on the plane that hit the second Twin Tower. Becky had left Boston on a flight earlier that same morning. This must be the worst nightmare come true for both of you.
It is. It is. God has given us both the strength to get through this. It's just unbelievable, but it's reality, and it is the worst thing you could ever imagine.
You were married to Al for 4.5 years. He flew almost every day as a flight attendant. Did you ever talk about the dangers in that job, the possibility of a hijacking of some kind? Did he ever go through anything in the past that was discomforting to him?
No, you know, he had only been flying for United about 8 months. He had retired just before that as a policeman here in Alamogordo after 21 years. So, but I had actually more concern about him flying than I had with him being a policeman.
Why is that?
You know, I don't know. The community we live in is very safe, and it's a, you know, it's a small community, and I just never really worried about him out on the streets here. But I guess, you know, out there flying, he's not close to home, and when there is an accident, it just seems so horrendous.
Josh, tell me a little something about your dad, who had been a policeman and then became a flight attendant.
My dad's probably one of the most respected persons in this town and in this entire state. Like I said earlier, he had the strongest faith in the Lord that I've seen in a lot of people. And I know God had his will with my dad, and I think he's in a better place now. I know he's in a better place now.
Yeah.
Josh, I know this is so difficult for you, but why did your dad want to be a flight attendant?
You know, my dad is a very adventurous person. He loved people. He loved making people laugh. He can turn any frown upside down in any situation, and he felt God wanted him to be there. He wanted to see the world. He got to travel, and
no, I know it's hard, Josh.
Yeah.
Becky, when did you first have the realization that your husband may have been on one of those flights that flew into the Twin Towers?
Actually, when I had flown from Boston that morning and had landed in Denver, we were just landing, and a young man next to me had a small handheld email, some kind of little email card, and he just looked at me and said, "Oh my God." And I said, "What?" And he told me that about the plane that had hit the first tower, and my first reaction was, "Oh my God, my husband's a flight attendant and he flew this morning." And he said, "I'm sure it was just a commuter plane. It probably wasn't a jumbo jet." And so then he handed me his little handheld device and let me read, and it said the flights had originated in Boston. And so I was afraid then, but still wasn't sure. So when we landed and they, you know, removed everyone from the plane and told him to take everyone with him, that everyone had been grounded, I went to the phone and I called his cell phone, and his message that said, "Hi, I can't come to the phone right now," was still on. So I had hope that it wasn't his flight. And there was no one there to give any information. You know, I don't think at that time they even knew exactly which flight. I mean, I didn't know exactly which flight he was on. So it was later at a hotel there in Denver, where I had gone, that some people there had told me that that the flight that had left was flight 175, and I had a feeling at that time that he was, but I didn't want to believe it. So it wasn't until a little after noon that day that United had called and confirmed it.
Well, we wish you both the very best. I know how proud you were of Al Marchand, who was a flight attendant on United Airlines Flight 175. You know, it is inescapable for you. This is a 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week coverage on television. Are you able to watch those images? That must be more painful than you can bear, Josh.
Actually, to be honest with you, I'm more at peace now than I was, because I know my dad's faith is too strong. I know that he's in a better place now, and I feel very good about his situation. I think God wanted him on that plane for a reason, whether it was to save a soul or everyone on that plane, for everyone to follow him to heaven. Whatever his purpose was, he served it, and it adds a lot of comfort. Makes things a lot easier.
Well, I want to tell you, Becky and Josh, that I think that you've comforted a lot of people as well who have been grieving with you, and we so admire your strength, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us. Harold Koplowitz is a noted child psychiatrist and deals with stress and trauma in situations just like this. That was quite a remarkable young man, Dr. Koplowitz, Josh, who has found his own way of dealing with it.
Tom, these stories are so real and also so close to us. I don't think this country has ever had a time where we're exposed to this kind of raw emotion. Josh and his stepmom's religious faith is really holding them together. But the thing that we should think about is that it's not only going to be the tragic families that have lost someone in either one of these air crashes or at the Pentagon or at the World Trade Center. It's children, it's people who knew them. It is the whole community of the United States that keeps watching this that starts to feel the trauma of this horrific event.
And how do we deal with it, individually or within our families or within our communities?
Well, one of the most important things is to talk about it, to find a safe place to speak. So if you're a family, it's really quite important that you talk to your children about this event, no matter how small they are, even if they're under the age of 5, to tell them what has occurred and to let them know that they can talk to you about it. Most kids, by the way, will be most interested in how it'll affect them. Is my school safe? Will we be able to fly to grandma's on Christmas? Those kinds of things. But also for older children, for teenagers or college-age kids, they can be very nonchalant about it and pretend that there really isn't a problem. And you should make sure that you're willing to have an open ear to listen to them. But for most of us, we should start watching the symptoms that are coming over most of us, particularly here in New York, this numbing sensation, the feeling like we're in a dream, that this can't be really happening, the ability to concentrate that seems so difficult, and also your sleep, that it's harder to fall asleep or harder to stay asleep. And we expect these very acute stress reactions in most of America. We have a new benchmark. We've never had something like this occur. Pearl Harbor might be something that we heard about in history, but it happened so far away from mainland the United States, and we had a different kind of media system, so we didn't experience it the way we're feeling this. And so it's going to take quite a long time for America to heal from this. In fact, if those of you who saw the president today speaking from the White House, he started to tear, and I think it was exactly the way most Americans feel, that no matter how loving and no matter how tough we feel, we're hurting also.
Some people were saying, gee, I don't know whether I want my president to cry. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for America?
No, I think it's a wonderful thing. I think that, the president is, in any which way you want to say it, is like a father figure to us. And I think it's important that children see that their parents can be in pain, but they're still in control. They're still calm. They can assure us. They can tell us that something good is going to happen out of this. And the fact is that, our airplanes, as you've reported, are going to be much safer. It's going to be a pain. It's going to be a nuisance. But we are going to be safer in the skies, and we are going to get the bad guys. I mean, for little children, we tell them that all the time. There are bad guys and good guys, and there's no ambiguity about this. We're going to find them, and that makes people feel better. When you see Colin Powell and you see Ashcroft, you see these people telling you what the plan of action is. And I think that is the same thing we should do in our families, is reassure our children that their schools are safe, that they may have trouble falling asleep, so they can stay in our room or we'll stay in their room for a few nights to reassure them, and we're going to get back to normal. We're going to get back to a routine that's going to feel like every day, even though we know it's never going to be exactly the same.
Dr. Harold Koplowitz from NYU, an expert in child behavior. He's a psychiatrist, obviously, sharing some very valuable information. Thank you very much for being with us, Doctor. Okay, thank you. We want to tell you that if you're interested in helping or if you need some guidance and help for yourself, there is a place that you can turn to. It's help.msnbc.com. The Red Cross and other agencies, we have phone numbers and addresses for you on there so that you can get some assistance. There has been an alarming development in Lower Manhattan at the World Trade Center, or what was once the World Trade Center. One of the remaining parts of the South Tower is beginning to collapse. It was a kind of steel skeleton that existed down there. Let's get an update on that now from NBC's Ann Curry. Ann?
That's right, Tom. The south edge of the South Tower. I'm going to let the cameraman zoom behind me. Just about an hour ago, the spikes that you're seeing in your screen, those spikes are that skeleton you're talking about, Tom, and about an hour ago, they suddenly moved. We have eyewitness accounts of a sudden movement. We also have accounts of the hearing of metal moving, that kind of, you know, that screeching kind of sound that moving metal makes. People started running, screaming, leaving the scene. However, there were some rescuers who did not leave the top of the rubble. And they didn't leave the rubble because they heard tapping sounds underneath. This is in the same area, about the same area as the landslide earlier today, from which 3 firefighters have been pulled out alive. We have an interview that was done just a little while ago with NYPD officer James Rogers. It was done by David Blue, my colleague. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Even though the south side of the South Tower might be about to collapse.
Right, someone's tapping from below. Survivor.
And you guys are staying?
A lot of guys stay, yes.
Yeah, people direct.
Yeah, I don't limit guys how to get the hell out, but the guys on the rope will stay there.
Because?
They have the saws, the lights, the power source. Stay.
Right, but the reason why they stayed is
someone's tapping from below.
And you can hear from the tremble in Officer Rogers' voice, the feeling really that a lot of people, a lot of rescuers have been coming out from the scene with. Having gone all the way inside, I can tell you that it's a scene of utter devastation. As we've been reporting for days, but it's hard to describe really except until you really are right there. It is remarkable, the physical and the emotional challenge these rescuers are facing, not only dealing with recovering remains, but and the search for survivors, trying so desperately to find anyone still alive, but also in addition, given the danger of the circumstances there, realizing that at any moment the bullhorn could sound and their lives could be in danger. We have seen many more than I can describe rescuers come from that area in tears. Big men who've seen it all, in tears, weeping. And I think you talked to psychiatrists a short time ago, Tom. Well, I tell you, there's a lot of trauma counseling that is due these men and women who are here on the scene because they, as one put it, he'll never be the same because of what he's seen, Tom.
All right, thank you very much, NBC's Ann Curry, and we'll have Ann there throughout the evening covering these events for NBC News. We want to go now to the White House and NBC's David Gregory. Tomorrow is a national day of mourning, David, and there will be a national memorial service as well.
That's right, Tom, and the president will take part in that. Before going to New York City, he held a conference call today with Governor Pataki and Mayor Giuliani of New York to formally accept their invitation to come visit the site. I spoke to senior officials this afternoon. They're still trying to work out with authorities there just how much the president can actually see. Is it something that he can only tour from the air, or will it be something he can actually see right there at the scene at Ground Zero? There are safety issues there. The White House has always said they don't want the president to be a hindrance, but officials I spoke to this afternoon say the president feels it's very important to be there to show New Yorkers, to show those rescue workers how much compassion he has representing the nation for what they're going through, and to express his appreciation. We've seen a lot from the president today, particularly emotionally, and you were just talking about that, Tom. I spoke to one of his closest advisors who said, for all of them, today seemed to be a day when the gravity of this situation was really bearing down on them. Let's listen to what the president had to say.
I think about the families, the children. I'm a loving guy, and I'm also someone, however, who's got a job to do, and I intend to do it. And this is a terrible moment, but this country will not relent until we have saved ourselves and others from the terrible tragedy that came upon America. Thank you.
I've spoken to a close friend of the president today, Tom, who said that the entire administration, those close to this president, understand what a test this is for a leader. They believe, of course, that George W. Bush was built for this and that he's best under these circumstances. Other officials describing him as alternately as tough and stern, but you saw a picture of a president, of a leader there who's clearly touched by the totality of all of this today at the same time, on the same day that he's working with his national security team for military options and to gather more intelligence. Tom?
Well, I suspect that his behavior reflects the behavior of so many people across the country. It does come in waves and unexpectedly when you think about all the families that have been affected in such a devastating fashion. And the worst of the stories may be yet to come because we don't know how many bodies are buried in the World Trade Center, nor do we know exactly how many servicemen and women were lost at the Pentagon. And when those bodies begin to come out and go into body bags, that too is going to be another test for everyone. The President of the United States tomorrow has declared a day of national mourning. There will be, of course, a national memorial service beginning at noon before he comes here. The story will go on for a long, long time. As the President said today, this war against terrorism is now the focus of his administration. We'll have continuing coverage with NBC's Brian Williams, my colleague. I'll be back here at 6:30 for NBC Nightly News and then throughout the evening on this NBC station.
This is a News 10 NBC special report. America under siege.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Martin.
I'm Gabe Dallas. Brett and Shelley are on assignment in Washington, D.C. and New York City. The attack on America is affecting us here at home in a profound way.
Absolutely. You are currently looking at a live picture of the Rochester International Airport. It remains closed right now, and it probably will not open until tomorrow. Some airlines in other parts of the country returned to the nation's skies today. Ray Lovato will join us live in just a minute with another development at the airport.
The Rochester Red Cross is still asking for your help tonight. More people lined up today at donation centers around the area. Extra staff are on hand to screen donors and to draw blood. Our region's Red Cross has already sent blood to New York City. Medical reporter Robin DeWind will join us live in a moment with more on how you can take part.
The red, white, and blue is standing tall in Rochester. Nearly everywhere you look, someone is displaying the American flag. And they're getting tough to come by. The Stars and Stripes flag store on South Avenue has been swamped with people today. Some stores even sold out of their supply of flags.
We have some good news from New York City. Crews found 3 firefighters alive in the rubble. They'd been helping in the rescue effort, but were missing since this morning. They came out of a pocket in the wreckage. It's good news on a day that Mayor Giuliani announced that about 4,700 people have been reported missing. There's also late word that the top floors are buckling at a skyscraper next to the World Trade Center complex. That skyscraper, incidentally, has been evacuated. And an air traffic control center employee told a New Hampshire newspaper that the 2 hijacked planes that crashed into the World Trade Center almost never made their target. He says the planes almost crashed into each other on the way. News on NBC's Shelley Rovando is live in New York City. She will join us live with more up-to-the-minute information in just a few minutes.
President Bush is declaring tomorrow a national day of prayer. That's when he'll travel to New York to tour the damage. The president spoke on the phone with Governor George Pataki and New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani today. He then spoke to reporters. He became visibly emotional when he spoke about saving ourselves from terrorism.
And now's an opportunity to do generations a favor by coming together and whipping terrorism. Hunting it down, finding it, and holding them accountable. The nation must understand this is now the focus of my administration.
The President and First Lady then headed to Washington Hospital Center this morning to visit victims of the Pentagon attack. He thanked the staff there for their care of the wounded and told the victims that the nation is praying for them and for their families.
Well, NBC has new information that a signal is coming from the black box of the plane that crashed into the Pentagon. The job of lifting debris from the damaged section of the Pentagon was put on hold for a time this morning. A bomb scare led officials to move work crews and military personnel away from the building. Brett Davidson is in our nation's capital. He will join us live with more details a little later in the show. Several archaeologists are now helping out at the crash site where a United plane went down in Pennsylvania. The plane's impact was so great, most of the evidence is buried under the soil, thus the archaeological expertise is needed. Investigators are still going through the rubble, looking for clues on who committed this horrible terrorist act.
Rochester's airport is not officially open yet, and passenger flights probably will not resume until tomorrow, but it's still been a very busy day there. And that's where Ray Lovato is standing by live with the very latest. Ray?
Brian, the sheriff's checkpoint is right behind me. The airport remains closed for the third day in a row. It is really unprecedented. Not even during the worst blizzard has the airport been shut down this long, but patience is going to be a key word from now on.
County Executive Doyle was blunt and to the point about the future for airline passengers in Rochester.
Everybody knows about the convenience of our airport. 10 minutes from downtown, 15 minutes to get on the plane. You can do it within a half hour, even buy a coffee and a paper and get on the plane. What about now? Today, people are going to have to change their ways.
Part of that includes no curbside check-ins. All vehicles dropping off passengers at the terminal will be expected to move along quickly.
And they're going to be allowed to drop people off and empty their bags out of the car, and then they're going to have to keep their vehicle moving. We're not going to have vehicles standing anymore within 300 feet of the terminal.
Airport crews removed dozens of cars from the parking garage. One of the new FAA requirements is that no vehicle be allowed within 300 feet of the terminal. There were a few tense moments when one of the police dogs indicated something suspicious in the trunk of one of those parked cars. It turned out to be a false alarm. The airport did get permission today to allow planes to be moved in and out. An American WestJet, one of the two planes diverted here Tuesday, took off for Columbus. Earlier, a JetBlue plane landed here from Buffalo.
With respect to the question over here about the hassle involved with women not having their purses or whatever, the days of worrying about hassles are over. This is the way it's going to be, and we all got to live with it.
Doyle also said that if people don't feel comfortable with all this, then perhaps they should not fly at this time. Now, the county is devising a system to let owners of those moved vehicles be able to find them once they return to Rochester. There are hundreds of vehicles here, people that took a flight out before Tuesday and may not be home yet. Reporting live from the airport, Ray Lovato, News 10 NBC.
And Ray, thank you very much. Speaking of airplanes, we are told that crews in Pennsylvania have just found the black box of the plane that went down in Pennsylvania. Officials now hope that it will obviously lead to some sort of clues into this investigation as to what went on. Gabe?
The Trailways Bus Company in Rochester is back in operation this evening after being shut down for 2 days. Trailways resumed service this morning at 4 o'clock. Officials tell us that they are taking passengers to New York City, and Greyhound Bus Company is also back up and running tonight. Monroe County Executive Jack Doyle is asking that all local churches ring their bells tomorrow at noon. This, of course, is to remember the victims of the attacks and to encourage rescue workers. Again, at noon, area churches will ring their bells in harmony for 5 minutes.
The Rochester Red Cross still needs your help. Hundreds of people turned out today to area blood donation centers. Medical reporter Robin DeWin joins us live from our newsroom with the very latest on that. Robin?
Well, Brian, the Red Cross wants to thank all those people who have come out to donate blood. In fact, late this afternoon, the White House released a statement urging people to continue to donate blood across the country. It was a steady pace today, and the lines were not as long at the Prince Street Donation Center, but at times the wait was up to an hour and a half. So far, 1,100 units of blood from the Rochester area have been sent to the New York City area. The Red Cross says they still need all types of blood and hope that people will continue to give, but officials are asking that you phone ahead to make an appointment.
That will allow people to make scheduled appointments and help us staff some of these drives a little better. But we still are encouraging the public to please come out and donate by scheduling their appointment because we still do need all blood types.
Now we have two numbers for you tonight to make an appointment and to find out about the nearest blood donation center near you. We have the 1-800-GIVE-LIFE number, but due to the overwhelming response, the Red Cross has opened up a second phone line, and that's 1-888-840-1373. On an added note, the Red Cross has received more than 1,000 phone calls since Tuesday with people wanting to volunteer, organize a blood drive, or just donate money. In fact, the Red Cross had to set up 15 additional phone lines to handle the overwhelming response. Reporting live from the newsroom, medical reporter Robin DeWind, News 10 NBC.
Well, Robin, thank you very much. And residents across our area are also looking for ways to donate cash for the relief efforts. Wegmans is just one of the many places offering a way for people to help out. Deborah Boxty joins us live from a store in Chilai. Deborah?
Well, Gabe, customers at Wegmans stores like this one are hearing something different when they pass through the checkout lines. Cashiers are asking everyone if they care to donate to the Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund. So far, customers at this store alone have raised almost $3,000. The donation effort started when stores opened for business this morning. Customers streamed through the checkout lines, many of them choosing to donate. You can give $1, but we've heard of many pitching in $20, $50, even $100. The money will go directly to help with victims' families and relief efforts in New York City and Washington, D.C.
Why wouldn't you want to help at least a little bit? You know, living this distance away, there's not a lot we can do, so that would be just a small thing.
Whether you can give $1 or $10, it all collectively will go directly to the Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund to help the victims of this tragedy and the victims of other tragedies.
Did you want to donate to the Red Cross Relief? How much was
Put me down for 10 this time.
$10? Alrighty.
And that's the sounds that we're hearing over and over again at the store here as people are deciding to pitch in whatever they feel they can. We want to stress that Wegmans is stressing that it is okay not to donate. There is absolutely no pressure when you go through the checkout lines. This fundraising effort will continue for 2 weeks. Reporting live in Chilai, Deborah Bogsty, News 10 NBC.
All right, Deborah, thank you very much. Obviously, people have been helping out, and it's just wonderful. Wegmans says the trucks full of supplies from Rochester have made it to New York City. Wegmans donated 1 truck of supplies on its own and also provided 3 trucks that were filled with all these pillows, cots, and blankets. They were collected yesterday at a company called New York Police Supply on East Ridge Road. There you see some of the supplies being carried to the trucks and then loaded up. These are all going to New York City police officers who are sleeping on the streets.
News 10 NBC is down in New York City to bring you word of the very latest. Today, Shelley Rubando located a former RIT student who works right near Ground Zero. Shelley joins us live from Manhattan with the very latest. Shelley?
Brian, I'm in Lower Manhattan, just about 4 blocks from where they're closing streets leading down to the World Trade Center area. Earlier today, this is what it looks like down there. Hundreds and hundreds of rescue workers forming what looks like an assembly line as they look through the debris. Some people we spoke to around New York City today are still waiting to hear about their loved ones. Others are reaching out to let family and friends know they're okay, including a woman we met up with who graduated from RIT.
I have a lot of friends up in Rochester, so I couldn't get through. The lines were very busy, and my first instinct was just that even though I'm okay, whenever there's something going on, I think it's everybody who knows that you live here, they get all upset. And I just wanted to let them know that I wasn't at the towers.
Email. She sent this out to friends in Rochester and all around the world. It's starting with so many for feeling.
We've been pretty immune to this kind of thing here in the U.S., but in all honesty, I've been expecting this for quite a while and fully aware of the fact that I'm at Ground Zero. It's pretty tough here, as it really is a war zone. The stories of kindness and compassion and bonding together are just as prevalent as the horror stories, but my heart is breaking for the many firemen and rescue workers we have lost. The sadness is almost unbearable. As usual, this continues to be a hell of a town.
Go. The latest numbers we do have on missing firefighters are the numbers up to about 350. Coming up on Express News at 5:30, we'll have the latest on President Bush's arrival into New York City tomorrow. Reporting live from Manhattan, Shelley Rubando, News 10 NBC.
All right, Shelley reporting live. Thank you very much.
Another RIT graduate is not as lucky. We're learning today there are more families here at home with close ties to those who are missing in these terrorist attacks or who are known to have perished. Gary Liberatore has been talking with those families. He joins us now live in our newsroom with more. Gary?
Gabe, a 1977 graduate of RIT, was on American Airlines Flight 11, which did crash into the World Trade Center. Philip Rosenzweig was working for a computer company in Boston. His flight from Boston to Los Angeles was one of the 4 that was hijacked. Now, one of he and his wife's best friends lives here in Parrington. Jan Waxman says the 2 couples' kids basically grew up together when she and her husband lived in Boston. She says she talked with Rosenzweig's wife by phone this morning. She says Phil was the best father, and his kids and wife are going to miss him very much.
I've been glued to the television the past few days, and but now that it's got a personal, there's a name to it that we can identify with, it's more difficult. I've actually not watched it.
And we've also learned of another person missing from our area, missing at the Pentagon. Commander William Donovan of Nunde is listed as unaccounted for. Donovan is 37. Reporting live from the newsroom, Gary Libertor, News 10, NBC.
Now, bringing you Western New York's most advanced forecasting technology, here's meteorologist Kevin Williams in the 10 NBC Weather Lab.
And good afternoon to one and all. There is some good news weather-wise as the recovery efforts continue. The weather continues to be quite good. In fact, we're going to lead this weather segment with information about that. The weather has been very cooperative indeed, but we do expect there will be some changes. Some rain is heading toward New York City for tonight into tomorrow morning. Likewise, Washington and, for that matter, Pittsburgh. So that will, on the one hand, settle the dust, but may create some mud concerns. The weekend, though, to all areas will bring sunshine, and that certainly will be some very good news. Now, we've got some storms out in the Atlantic to keep our eyes on. This is Hurricane Erin moving away from the U.S. Hurricane Felix moving north, no threat to the coast. This system, though, does bear watching. This is Tropical Storm Gabrielle. And some of the models want to blow up into a major hurricane and track center of circulation out here, by the way, and track something like this and then like that. So that would be an issue. Over the weekend, it could threaten the Gulf Coast as a major hurricane, and then perhaps up parts of the eastern seaboard next week, something we'll watch very closely. Clouds have moved back in after some sunshine earlier today, 64 degrees and dropping with a brisk breeze coming in out of the north at 15 miles an hour. And again, the front that came through with a couple of showers earlier, just enough to settle the dust here. We're in a bit of a drought again, but not very much moisture. But now a disturbance riding atop of that, and a very active jet stream will bring a streak of moisture in, with some showers returning later tonight, and a vigorous upper air disturbance might even trigger some water spouts on Lake Ontario later tonight and tomorrow morning. So here's the setup. There's the front that came through. A disturbance rides along it. The front pushes south and east, even as Gabrielle continues to strengthen in the eastern Gulf. But for us, high pressure arrives with a real flavor of fall this weekend. So cool, in fact, that a light frost is not out of the question in some rural valleys south of 5 and 20 by early Saturday morning. In the meantime, for tonight, the clouds gather, the breeze will be busy, and some showers around later tonight. You might even hear a clap of thunder, a little lake enhancement going on, the low temperature down to 47. Tomorrow may start with a shower, then the clouds break for some sun, but a chilly breeze, the high only 58. It'll feel as though it's in the 40s, so bundle the little ones up just a little bit heading off to school. The weekend looks bright, crisp, and cool, with temperatures moderating early next week into the low and mid-70s. But some showers later tonight and a look and feel of late October around here tomorrow.
Okay. Kevin, thanks.
Thanks. The U.S. says it will launch attacks against those behind the terrorist attacks. What do American veterans think about retaliation? Brett Davidson is live in Washington, D.C. Brett?
Well, Gabe, the president calls this the first war of the 21st century. His defense secretary says the U.S. will launch sustained military strikes against those responsible for these terrorist acts, as well as their support systems. Well, who knows better about war than U.S. veterans? We spoke with two of them today. At the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, they remember the victims of a different war. At the same time, just across the Potomac, the remnants of a terrorist act unparalleled on U.S. soil. Here at the memorial, where scars still run deep, vets say regardless of the tactics used to blow a hole in the Pentagon this week, make no mistake about it, it is war.
Probably a lot more impersonal than it was years ago, where, let's say, you knew who your enemy was, and you pretty much, you know, face to face. But
in Vietnam, tens of thousands of servicemen died. This week, thousands of unsuspecting U.S. civilians are dead or unaccounted for.
But the enemy is ill-defined. And I don't know how you're going to go to war against a country such as that, or such as whomever, that lives in tents, yurts, mud huts, whatever. There's nothing over there to bomb.
And that is part of the problem Congress is struggling with. Some would like the U.S. to declare war. The problem is who to declare it against. But vets like Hiram Clement agree with the president, who has vowed to hold any country that supported this act equally responsible.
if we find out there's a government that is supporting these terrorists, physically and financially, that they should be the ones that we direct our wrath at.
But even as leaders warn against pinning blame on a specific religion or ethnic background, vets like William O'Hearn talk of extreme measures during this so-called time of war.
Maybe we ought to gin up a re-education camp for Islamics, Syrians, Mideastern people, I don't know.
But even in this heightened sense of anger and frustration, it is my guess there are few who share that particular opinion. Meantime, over at the Pentagon, the recovery efforts continue tonight, and I can tell you we are still tracking information about Navy Commander William Donovan Jr., age 37, of Nunde, who is still among those unaccounted for over at the Pentagon. Reporting live from Washington, D.C., Brett Davidson, News 10 NBC.
Brett, thank you very much. The former president and the father of our current president, George Herbert Walker Bush, talked to reporters and business groups this morning in Boston. The president's dad spoke about the national crisis and told reporters that America still has a strong intelligence and informational system. George Herbert Walker Bush is also the former head of the CIA.
The world we live in today is very different than what it was when this week began. Very different indeed. And we should make sure that these agencies responsible for protecting American citizens against terror are not forced to fight this critical battle with one arm tied behind them.
First Lady Laura Bush made an appearance on the Today Show this morning. Mrs. Bush talked about the tragedy and how she's a potential target. First Lady was in the Senate with Senator Kennedy and Senator Gregg discussing education when she first learned about what happened. Tonight she's urging parents to talk with their children about the national crisis.
I want to encourage parents and businesses and schools and every place around the country to set up mental health help for parents. And parents, if you feel like you're having difficulty dealing with your own emotions and your own sadness, you might want to go talk to a clergy member or to a counselor so that you can help your children deal with it.
Mrs. Bush continues to visit victims of the Pentagon attack at hospitals in Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic in England, an unusual display of American support today at Buckingham Palace. The popular changing of the guard ceremony was replaced by an American tribute. A military band entered the palace grounds playing Stars and Stripes Forever. Then the military band began to play the American national anthem. The U.S. ambassador to Britain attended the ceremony along with Prince Andrew. Everyone choked back tears at the British display of support for the U.S.
A local farm market is reaching out to help all the families of the firefighters who lost their lives trying to save others at the World Trade Center. Wendy Wright joins us live from Ammons Farm Market on East Ridge Road. Wendy?
Gabe, if you stop into Ammons Farm Market here on East Ridge Road in Irondequoit, you'll notice this display. The folks here are collecting money for the children of the firefighters who died at the World Trade Center this week. And already today, people have stopped in to drop off money and donate. Owners here say they plan to collect it and forward it to the families who lost loved ones who were trying to rescue others. Why are they doing this? Well, the owners here have plenty of firefighters in the family. Patty Amon's husband is a firefighter at the Ridge Culver Fire Department. She says if he died in the line of duty, leaving her and her two children behind, she would face certain financial difficulty.
This is the only thing I can do from here for firemen's wives. I could be in the same position tomorrow, tonight, next week, a year from now. My husband could be gone, and how would I support them? And there are a lot of moms that don't have husbands anymore with a lot of little kids, and they're going to need some help.
And Patty Amon's father-in-law and grandfather were both firefighters in their careers. It's really unknown at this point how many children are affected by this who might have lost a mom or a dad who were firefighters in this tragedy, but the number is likely to be in the hundreds. So this is one way you can help. Again, this is Amon's Farm Market on East Ridge Road in Irondequoit. Reporting live from the farm market, Wendy Wright, News 10 NBC.
In times like these, people tend to reach deep into their pockets to help out. But what do students do who want to help out but may not have a lot of money to give? Education reporter Elizabeth Shernack joins us now live with this story. Elizabeth?
Brian, just a week ago, students at Buckman Heights Elementary School in Greece went back to school. It was a school full of new supplies, many that were donated after arson destroyed them last year. And now the students are doing what they can to give back to those most in need right now.
Hi, my name is Jared.
Jared Sangiorgi is only in the 3rd grade, but his parents allowed him to watch the news about the terrorism.
I asked my mom if there was a way that we could help.
Jared's mom suggested he write a letter to read to his friends at school, at Buckman Heights Elementary School, where students have dealt with the terror of fire and the donations of good people.
That is why I thought that we could start a penny drive throughout the school.
Pennies Jared will send to the American Red Cross.
So go home, tell your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, uncles, and even your friends, we need your pennies. Okay.
In just one day, Buckman Heights students have collected over $40 in pennies.
I think with his family, he did a very good job. 21, 22, 23.
I think he understands to learn that little bit of volunteering that we can do can help.
We should start money so they can build the Twin Towers again and fix the Pentagon.
Jared also wants to fix the people who were hurt, and he hopes all of his hard work puts a smile on their faces and the faces of his friends at Buckman Heights.
I thought you were sweating. I think they're sort of proud of me for what I said.
Lots of schools around our area are collecting donations to help people affected by the terrorism. We'll tell you about one high school project later in our shows. With Project Education, Elizabeth Shernack, News 10 NBC.
Aside from doing what they can to support the victims of this horrible act, local residents are also showing their support for their country. Lynette Adams tells us it's a simple act of waving a flag.
They were taking flags out of the window and off the wall. People are scooping up flags anywhere they can get them, especially here at the store that specializes in flags, and they're running out.
Yesterday, Stars and Stripes had about 5,000 of these handheld flags. By the end of business yesterday, half of them had been sold.
3 flag pins.
Don't have any, won't have any until the middle of next week.
Okay, then I'm going to need, you have any more of the antenna flag?
A couple large ones.
People don't care what size or how much they cost. They just want flags.
Anything from tattoos to decals to antenna flags to 6x10s, little 4x6 handheld flags. We're really selling just about everything that's in the store.
The nylon is $46.50. The Coralex is $58.95.
Local stores have sold out of flags. David Aaron ran out at his hardware store.
Well, there's a lot of people coming in asking us for flags, and we're actually sold out at this point, so we thought we'd just come over here and so we could display some ourselves.
People want more than ever to show their pride in America. These students from the Rochester School for the Deaf will sell these items so they can donate money to the Red Cross.
I'm so proud to be an American, and I just feel it's so important that we show our patriotism right now.
It's hard to know what to do, and this is something we all can do, is fly our flag and show our support.
That sentiment multiplied many times over each time a flag is sold. Lynette Adams, News 10 NBC.
You can also buy American flags and ribbons at the Home Depot stores, and all the money that from those sales will go to the Salvation Army relief efforts.
The Buffalo Bills game is canceled on Sunday. The NFL will not play its games this weekend following the terrorist attacks in New York and Washington. Major League Baseball has also postponed all games through Sunday. And NASCAR has also canceled races this weekend. We will have the very latest of the sporting world on Express Sports at 5:30. You can help the victims of the terrorist attack by going to a free car wash at all Buckman's car wash locations this Sunday. Between 1 and 5, Buckman's employees are volunteering their time. All donations collected will go to the Red Cross.
Local churches are offering prayer services during this time of mourning and uncertainty. Tonight at 7, Corpus Christi Church on East Main Street will hold a special service. Search teams at Ground Zero have found 3 firefighters alive under the rubble today. We cannot show you the rescue scene because cameras are not allowed in that area, but we do want to show you a special piece of equipment that rescuers are using to find survivors. Jim Scott has the story from California.
Search! A search dog locates a firefighter hidden beneath a pile of concrete. The spot is tagged with red tape. Another search dog is sent in to confirm the find. And then the search cam is brought in.
Anywhere in this vicinity, there might be a victim.
Developed in 1991 by a Kern County firefighter, a mini cam mounted on a telescoping tube transmits pictures back from the void, a hidden space where the victim is trapped but still alive.
How you doing in there?
10 to 15 years ago, Captain Park recognized a void in our rescue tools. There was actually no way to look into a void space and actually see if someone was in there to rescue. He came up with the miniaturized camera and lighting array. The unit also has a microphone, so you can have two-way conversation.
By drilling a 2-inch hole, the search cam can be inserted practically anywhere. The search cam is a force multiplier, allowing a small group to cover a large area, dramatically speeding up the search and rescue process.
And it's pretty simple to use.
The search cam is now in its 4th generation of development and is recognized as the international standard for urban search and rescue. And as you might imagine, the Kern County firefighter who designed this little contraption is getting a lot of phone calls right now.
The phone's been ringing about every 3 minutes.
Scott Park estimates dozens of his search cams are being deployed right now in New York City, probably more when the search and rescue process hits high gear.
And some local banks are doing what they can to help out in this time of need.
Yeah, Key Bank has set up an account to accept donations at all of its centers on behalf of the Salvation Army, and HSBC is accepting donations for the American Red Cross at all of its branches. The bank will also match donations up to $1,000. Well, if you are just joining us, this is our continuing coverage of America Under Siege.
Recapping the latest information, the Rochester Airport is still closed at this hour. Ray Lovato will have more in a live report coming up. We'll also have the latest from New York City. Shelley Rabando is standing by in Manhattan with a live report, and our Brett Davidson will join us live from the nation's capital. We will also tell you about some local ties to victims in this attack on the World Trade Center, and we'll talk about how Wegmans Supermarkets is pitching in the relief effort.
Airlines are allowed to fly tonight, but only if they've met the new strict security measures. Officials have beefed up security at airports nationwide. The Rochester Airport remains closed at this hour. Ray Lovato joins us live from the airport with more. Ray?
Well, we do have some new information. The airport is not yet FAA certified, but the administrator says they hope to have that done in about 2 hours. The latest is the airport could reopen for incoming flights tonight. That's incoming only. Now, sheriff's deputies and police dogs searched vehicles in the parking garage. Many of them were towed away today to make way for that 300-foot buffer zone in front of the terminal required by the FAA. The airport did get permission for planes to be relocated today in and out of Rochester. This American West plane was the first one to take off for Columbus about 1 o'clock. A JetBlue plane touched down in Rochester this morning. It came from Buffalo and will be needed here when the airport opens for passenger traffic tomorrow morning, outgoing that is. I spoke with the airport administrator just a short time ago.
We met with the airlines in the last half hour. 2 of the carriers have scheduled arrivals tonight with passengers. Delta Airlines has 2 flights. One is a Comair flight from Cincinnati. One is a Delta mainline flight from Atlanta. We also have at least 2 flights that U.S. Airways hopes to bring here tonight that will have passengers on them.
Now, a reminder, when the terminal opens for outgoing flights tomorrow morning, people dropping off passengers will be required to do it quickly. They will not be allowed to leave their vehicles up in front of the terminal. There will be added sheriff's deputies here to enforce that. And again, there will be no curbside check-ins. All baggage must go to the ticket counters. Again, to recap, 4 incoming flights later tonight after the airport is recertified and reopens about 2 hours from now. They don't want people coming here tonight for passenger information or tickets because the ticket counter will be closed tonight. It will be open tomorrow morning. Reporting live from the airport, Ray Lovato, News 10 NBC.
Ray, thank you very much for that late information. Officials have detected a signal from a black box of the plane that crashed Tuesday into the Pentagon. Officials in the Pentagon say America and the rest of the civilized world should prepare itself for a long, drawn-out war against terrorism. Earlier today, officials at the Pentagon talked about retaliation plans, including a $20 billion supplemental budget request from the president. They say the money and military response are only the beginning.
And it's going to unfold over time. I think one thing is clear is that you don't do it with just a single military strike, no matter how dramatic. You don't do it with just military forces alone. You do it with the full resources of the U.S. government. It will be a campaign, not a single action.
Officials did not say what targets the U.S. might go after or discuss any specific military options.
NATO nations all around the world are saying tonight an attack against one ally is an attack against them all. For the first time in history, NATO is invoking a mutual defense clause. The countries say the attacks on the U.S. were an assault on the alliance itself. Tonight, leaders of Japan, Italy, Saudi Arabia, and NATO say they will stand together with the U.S. to combat terrorism.
And we are finding out about more local families who are dealing with the loss of loved ones. We turn to Gary Liberatore now, who is live in our newsroom. Gary?
Gabe, today we talked with a Rochester man whose sister worked in the World Trade Center and is missing now. We also talked to the best friend of a 1977 graduate of RIT who was on an American Airlines flight that did crash into the World Trade Center. His name is Phil Rosenzweig. He and his family live in the Boston area. Today we talked with Jan Waxman of Parrington. She and her husband are best friends with Phil and his wife. They met when they lived in Massachusetts. Now we also talked with Richard Turner of Rochester. His sister, 24-year-old Rochelle Snell, worked on the 93rd floor of Tower 2 at the World Trade Center.
My sister had called her just to let her know that, that the tower that was hit was not the tower that she was working in. She just told her, she was like, I'm fine. I just want to let you know that it was Tower 1 that was hit. I'm in Tower 2 and you know, everything is okay.
And of course, minutes after that, Tower 2 was hit, and that's the last time that the family heard from Rochelle. Reporting live from the newsroom, Gary Liberatore, News 10, NBC.
So sad, Gary, thanks.
President Bush attended a prayer service today at the National Cathedral in Washington. The president spoke to New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani and Governor George Pataki on the phone. Bush said he ordered benefit payment checks to go out immediately to the families of the victims of fallen firefighters and emergency personnel who lost their lives.
I look forward to joining with both of you in thanking the police and fire, the construction trade workers. Every world leader I've talked to in recent days has been impressed by what they have seen about our nation and the fabric of our nation.
President, we're looking forward to your visit. It will inspire us all, and we will be with you when the United States takes firm and appropriate action to those who conducted this evil.
The president also restated that the U.S. will win the war against terrorism. Well, by this time tomorrow, President Bush will be in New York City to take a toll of the damage of Tuesday's attacks. Shelley Rubando joins us live from New York City with the latest. Shelley?
Brian, there's more steady flow of traffic in and out of the city today, with people able to get in and out of Manhattan a lot easier. But of course, that will soon be changing once again tomorrow with the arrival of President Bush. Earlier today, President Bush announced he's coming to the city of Manhattan, in his words, to help calm the chaos. He visited a hospital in Washington earlier to see some people who were injured at the Pentagon explosion. He's also working with Congress today to draft plans for a military retaliation. He described the attack as the first war of the 21st century on the World Trade Center. He also promised America will win that war.
I'm a loving guy. And I'm also someone, however, who's got a job to do. And I intend to do it. And this is a terrible moment. But this country will not relent until we have saved ourselves and others from the terrible tragedy that came upon America.
Thank you.
And again, we're hearing reports that President Bush should be in Manhattan by tomorrow early afternoon. Coming up new at 6, we'll talk to an RIT graduate who recaps her last images of the old Manhattan skyline. Reporting live from Manhattan, Shelley Ravando, News 10, NBC.
All right, Shelley, thanks.
And we hear sirens in the background. Rural Metro Ambulance locally is helping the rescue effort in New York City tonight. Early yesterday morning, the local ambulance company sent 15 paramedics and ambulances to New York City. Officials tell us those crews are now working in Manhattan. In total, about 90 paramedics from all over the state are helping out in New York City. And local National Guardsmen and women prepared for action last night at the Armory on Culver Road. Governor Pataki has asked for 3,000 troops to be in New York City today for the cleanup. Nationwide, many people have volunteered for the Guard. Recruitment offices have taken hundreds of calls from people wanting to join the service. Local state troopers are also in New York City tonight. They were called out yesterday to help in the rescue effort. State police tell us that 53 officers from Troop E are now searching for survivors. A group of local firefighters are helping victims of those who died in the rescue efforts. They have set up a collection at an Irondequoit farm market. Wendy Wright joins us live from East Ridge Road with more on that. Wendy?
Well, Gabe, since this tragedy, there has really been an outpouring of support from citizens all across the country and certainly from the folks who live right here in Rochester. Here's another way people are helping. We're at Amon's Farm Market on East Ridge Road in Irondequoit. They have set up a display here. They're asking people who would like to help to go ahead and donate money if they would like to. This money will go to the children of the firefighters who died at the World Trade Center. The men and women who went into the building, as many as 300 potentially, who died at the World Trade Center trying to rescue other people. They have this entire display set up, some pictures of firefighters in the New York Post. They have a firefighter's helmet and a flag and some firefighters' boots. The owner here is actually a firefighter at the Ridge Culver Fire Department. And some of the people who've been coming in, who've been buying things here, are the people who are dropping money in. Even they're throwing in some change or a couple of dollars left over from what they have purchased. One of the people who dropped money off is Deborah Bailey. She says that really in this time of tragedy, it's the least she could do.
That's all I can do. I can't, unless I go there physically, do anything else to give money just so that they have the resources is what they need. That's what I think is the best way I could help.
Again, the money will go to help secure a financial future for the children who lost a father or a mother who was a firefighter who died at the World Trade Center this week. This is Amon's Farm Market on East Ridge Road. They're open until 8 o'clock tonight if you'd like to donate and help out. Reporting live from the farm market, Wendy Wright, News 10 NBC.
Our Wendy, thank you. Investigators are still looking into Tuesday's plane crash in western Pennsylvania. Crews have just found the plane's black box. Federal and state authorities are working around the clock searching for evidence in that crash of United Flight 93. Because the impact of the plane was so great, most of the evidence is buried in the soil.
And also, what evidence is in the crater. So to the naked eye, there's not a whole lot there now. That's why we have archaeologists who are here on scene and will be working on that site so that we can properly recover that information and hopefully use it in this investigation and ultimately bring who's ever responsible to justice.
And as you heard, some unusual expertise being recruited there. Archaeologists searching for evidence right now in the crater of that plane crash in Pennsylvania.
Now, bringing you Western New York's most advanced forecasting technology, here's meteorologist Kevin Williams in the 10 NBC Weather Lab.
Good afternoon. Some decided changes toward autumn weather are ahead over the next couple of days as we move into a decidedly late October-like pattern. That transition, the result of a cold front that came through today with a few showers. We're looking now at the live 10 NBC Weather Lab triple Doppler. These are some thunder showers across the northern tier of Pennsylvania. We also note a few showers developing back to the west of Buffalo. All is quiet here, but later tonight we do expect there will be a few showers. Might even be a clap of thunder with a water spout or two on the big lake late tonight and early tomorrow. But it's definitely cooling down. We were around 70 earlier downtown. We're down to 62 with a busy breeze. Let's set the stage for you, though, with respect to conditions for the search and recovery in New York City, Washington, even Pittsburgh. We've had some pretty good weather, but now we are anticipating some rain there, at least some showers, especially in New York City, late tonight and tomorrow. That system, though, will move out, and the weekend in those locations looks to be very sunny and cooler. It was in the 80s in New York City today. Well, here's the setup across the Atlantic. We have some action. Hurricane Erin This is Hurricane Felix, neither a threat to the U.S., but Tropical Storm Gabrielle, the center of circulation here west of Florida, could become a major hurricane and affect the eastern Gulf states and then perhaps move up the eastern seaboard next week. So that's something we'll watch very closely. Today, an interesting sky for a while. The sun did break out. We had a low-level northeast wind, but just above the bases of these clouds, a westerly breeze. So the tops of them were sheared off and pushed in the opposite direction, but at least we did see some sun. Kind of cloudy across the region. Now officially at the airport, 63 degrees. The dew point is low at 50, and there is a gusty breeze coming in out of the north-northwest. Here is the front I mentioned pushing to the east and south, but a disturbance on the top of that front will come through tonight with at least a few showers. It's a vigorous system, so might be a little turbulent around here late tonight and early tomorrow. The front itself, though, continues making headway south and east, and chilly high pressure moves in, so that temperatures tomorrow will be hard-pressed to get out of the 50s. And there'll be a stiff breeze out of the north blowing, so definitely a chiller tomorrow, but that high settles in for the weekend, which looks very sunny. So our forecast looks like this for tonight. Lots of clouds, showers later, a stiffening breeze, the low 47. That breeze will be howling for a while late tonight and tomorrow morning, but the clouds and any showers break for some sun. High temperature 58 degrees. The weekend here looks bright, crisp and cool with high temps in the 60s. Temperatures will moderate into the 70s next week. But tomorrow plan on a look and feel of mid to late October around
Starting to look like it, isn't it?
And tomorrow it will.
Okay, Kevin, thanks.
Later tonight, the Monroe County Legislature will vote on something that you're wearing, encouraging everyone to wave or show the American flag as a way of supporting and showing solidarity. A store called Stars and Stripes has sold thousands of small flags. All Chase Pitkin stores in the area have sold out of their stock of flags.
Well, people here in Rochester and all across the country are being asked tonight to continue to give blood. Medical reporter Robin DeWind is in the newsroom with more on that. Robin?
Well, Brian, the White House is asking people across the country to continue to give blood, and Rochester residents continue for a third day to do what they can to help those people in the New York City area and in Washington, D.C. 1,100 units of blood from Rochester is already in New York City. More is on the way if needed. Today, the lines at local blood donation centers were not as long, but at times there was at least an hour-and-a-half wait. The Red Cross says they want to encourage people to still donate. They're just asking that you make an appointment before coming out to a blood donation center.
We're asking people to call ahead, make the appointment, and if that appointment happens to be 3 days from now, 3 weeks from now, that blood is still important. Year-round, every day, we would accept that blood from the donors because we'll need that blood sooner or later, and no blood is going to be wasted.
To find a blood donation center near you, call 1-800-GIVE-LIFE, and a second number has been set up since the phone lines have been so jammed. You can call 1-888-840-1373. Also, more than 1,000 people have called the Red Cross office. They want to know if they can volunteer, set up a blood drive, and just donate money. So truly an overwhelming response from the Rochester community. Reporting live from the newsroom, medical reporter Robin DeWind, News 10 NBC.
All right, Robin, thank you very much. We have breaking news right now. We are told that the Senate has just been evacuated from the Capitol building. There was a bomb threat there. We will have more on this story, of course, as it develops, as we receive information. And we will also join Brett Davidson a little bit later in our show.
All right. I believe we go to Elizabeth Shernack, our education reporter, who tells us about very many different ways that students in our area want to help out victims of the attack. Elizabeth?
Well, Gabe, as you know, many students in our area have been watching this repeated images of terrorism that we've seen over the past few days. The benefit they've had is that many of them are able to talk about it and discuss it in class. Now they want to go further. They want to dig deep into their pockets to help out the victims. In Fairport, the student council at the high school challenged its 1,800 students and staff to raise $5,000 in just 2 days. Today was the first day, and they've already raked in more than $3,000. Students are donating money they've earned from jobs and from allowance. Student council felt a monetary donation to the American Red Cross would be the most helpful.
So we thought, money would be the easiest thing, so the Red Cross can figure, if we need blankets, we can go buy blankets. If we need food, we can buy food.
Fairport students are also considering donating money to any schools that were affected by damage from all of the terrorism. Now, Fairport, let me tell you, is just one of the many schools that are making efforts to donate money to victims. We'll tell you, of course, of others in days ahead. Reporting live from the newsroom, Elizabeth Shernack, News 10 NBC.
Elizabeth, thank you very much. In light of the tragedy, Wall Street was closed both yesterday and today. Officials say that trading on the stock market will resume Monday, making this the longest unscheduled stoppage in the history of the stock market. Hundreds of businesses were located, as you know, in the World Trade Center, including businesses that relate to Wall Street activity.
Markets overseas didn't seem to be too affected by today's stoppage on Wall Street. After falling to record lows yesterday, the Nikkei index in Japan rebounded slightly today. In fact, it was the first day on the plus side in over a week. Tonight, members of the G7 nations say they're committed to ensuring the attacks will not disrupt the world economy. Well, as we well know, the recovery efforts continue tonight at the Pentagon. We're going to go now live to Brett Davidson, who joins us from Washington, D.C. with the very latest. Brett?
Well, Brian, over at the Pentagon, the first major clue may be arising from the rubble. Crews have picked up on a signal from what they believe is the black box, and they are focusing their efforts on that area right now. The grim task of locating bodies goes on, but federally trained urban search teams are holding out hope of finding survivors. They are using high-tech censoring devices to look for and even hear the breathing of people who may be trapped, and they also have trained dogs in there as well. But as much as this is a rescue scene and a recovery scene, it is also a crime scene, and federal, state, and local authorities are searching for evidence. I asked the Arlington police chief this morning if they have found any of the weaponry used by the hijackers. He says they have not, but he did describe some of what they are finding.
It's fair to say that, you know, pieces of human remains as well as materials that both made up the aircraft and were contained in it have been recovered. We've got NTSB and FBI officials on the scene. They're both certainly highly skilled in analyzing those aspects of what is recovered for their evidentiary purposes.
But again, the first major piece of evidence may be soon forthcoming with the location of a signal that could lead to the black box. We will have much more on the recovery efforts coming up at 6 o'clock. Reporting live from Washington, D.C., Brett Davidson, News 10 NBC.
All right, Brett, thank you very much.
Thanks, Brett.
Owners of gas stations in the Midwest are now apologizing for gas hikes. Gas stations around the country, as you heard, jacked up prices earlier this week amid fears that supplies would be cut off. In some areas, gas prices went up to $4 to $5 a gallon.
Well, people all around our area continue to pitch in, helping out absolutely however they can. Wegmans now has a new effort underway to get cash to the crisis areas. Deborah Boxty joins us live from a store in Chili with more on that. Deborah?
Well, Brian, Wegmans has started a crisis cash donation program here. Cashiers, you can take a look right over here, are asking customers who go through checkout lines whether they'd like to donate to the Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund. There is no pressure to donate, yet many customers are choosing to help out. A Wegmans employee came up with the idea for this campaign, which is similar to the one Wegmans sponsors in the wintertime, where donation coupons are scanned and added to a bill. Wegmans did not have time to print up coupons this time, which is why cashiers are asking if people want to help. The money will go directly to help victims' families in New York City and in Washington, D.C. This checkout drive will run for 2 weeks.
I just think that it's going to be needed and everybody needs to contribute.
Would you like to donate to the Red Cross? Yes. How much would you like to donate? $1.
Already we have had a tremendous response at all of our stores.
Now you can donate as little as $1 to help out. We've heard stories, though, of customers donating $20, $50, even $100. So far at this store alone, customers have chipped in around $3,000. Reporting live in Chili, Deborah Bogsty, News 10 NBC.
All right, Deborah, thank you very much. Rich Funke here now with a look at the sporting world.
Well, we're going to talk about the National Football League because they've spent a couple of days trying to decide what to do, and they have decided now there will be no pro football this weekend, with many players adamant about not working this weekend. The Bills-Miami game and 14 others have been called off by the NFL in the wake of Tuesday's attacks in New York and Washington. The Bills held a short practice today. Owner Ralph Wilson, who was in Washington during the attack and is believed to have been near the Pentagon, issued a statement saying he fully backed the league's decision and said to play Sunday would have shown a great insensitivity to a national tragedy. Bills coach Greg Williams agreed.
We are extremely supportive of the league's decision to not play the games this weekend. I'd also like to make sure that everyone understands that we're very supportive of Mr. Wilson's vociferous announcement that he was in favor of the postponement.
The Buffalo Bills will practice a short workout tomorrow, then they will take the weekend off. The NFL has not decided yet whether to reschedule the games or go with a 15-game season. The Canadian Football League has decided to go ahead and play its games this weekend. About 180 players and 10 head coaches and GMs are Americans in the CFL. Major League Baseball has decided to postpone its games through Sunday. Baseball will extend the regular season to make up all games, and that will push the World Series into November. NASCAR has called off Sunday's Winston Cup New Hampshire 300. The race has been rescheduled for November 23rd, the day after Thanksgiving. The Big Ten, the Big 12, and the SEC have all done an about-face and postponed all college football games this weekend. The Notre Dame-Purdue game has been pushed back to December 1st. Also, Major League Soccer canceled the last 6 games of its regular season just a few moments ago. They will go directly to the playoffs in a couple of weeks. And the LPGA has just canceled its 54-hole Safeway Classic in Portland. They had decided to play, and you know, this thing is just kind of, everybody's taking a step back now, beginning to reflect a little bit and beginning to understand that people need time to get over this, and the fun and games are out this weekend.
It also obviously puts a huge amount of perspective into everyone's life, and you've said this so many times that, you know, it is just a game, and we always, you know, get so serious about things like, you know, like a football game or something like that, but when you have something like this happen, all of a sudden,
absolutely, you reset your priorities in times like this. In the case of the National Football League, they've got a real problem here because there isn't an extra week this year between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl, where they might have been able to push the entire schedule back. So they've got some decisions to make as to what they're going to do. Shorten the season. Right. There's been some talk about eliminating maybe one of the wild card teams and trying to play the last games of the regular season on wild card weekends. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Okay.
Rich, thanks.
Well, hundreds of people have been writing in to share thoughts, emails, phone calls, what have you.
Lara, who's here from Australia, writes, as an Australian with a very close friend living and working in New York, I was devastated by what has been going on. What is amazing is how upset the whole of Australia is, regardless of whether they know someone involved or not. Please know that you are all in our thoughts. Love one another and try and stay strong.
Donna writes, my thoughts, prayers, and tears go out to all the victims, their families and friends, and for those of us who are left with many confusing and unanswered questions. I believe that Thanksgiving Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and Grandparents' Day will now hold many new meanings for each and every one of us. We must stand strong and united together. Take the time to talk and hug your family and friends today. Select your words with true sincerity, honesty, and love, and open your hearts to one another without fear of what tomorrow may bring. Live for today and learn from yesterday. Well, all across the world, countries are honoring America. In Turkey, all flags there are being flown at half-staff to pay tribute to the thousands that died on Tuesday.
And, you know, people in other countries, it appears right now, are opening their hearts and giving the U.S. Perhaps overdue respect and kindness. NBC's Steve Swicegood has more.
The changing of the guard ceremony at Buckingham Palace broke tradition on orders from Queen Elizabeth. A British military band entered the courtyard playing the American March, Stars and Stripes Forever. It was a moving tribute from America's motherland.
Just really sad for the families that have lost their loved ones.
If the Tuesday tragedy was the blast heard around the world, then this was the day the world heard nothing. Russia, once America's bitter enemy, now in quiet solidarity. The Swedish royal family sat in the silent Parliament chamber. NATO, representing the world's strongest military alliance, stood still. All of Germany came to a standstill as firefighters in Berlin prayed for their colleagues in New York. Flowers covered American embassies from Norway to Japan. The ancient city of Rome was lit with torches as people marched through the city and prayed at the Colosseum. While Americans welcome the tributes, the special kinship with the British is a tie that remains strong. The Queen's unprecedented order for the American national anthem to be played was an emotional moment for U.S. Ambassador William Farish and the crowds around the palace gates. Then the palace guards stood in silence. What America needs right now, friends who care. Steve Swicegood, NBC News.
Students in Las Vegas are remembering a teacher killed in Tuesday's terrorist attacks. 14-year-old Mar Rodina wrote a poem about it to help cope with this tragedy. He agreed to share it with the world.
911, September 11th, 2001. A day of so much treachery, that day will live in infamy. So much sorrow, so much pain, thousands upon thousands senselessly slain. Millions of people wonder why these faceless cowards made the world cry. All of America ponders what's next. Is it not over, this plan so complex? From the farthest reaches of earth, you can feel the hurt. Endless heartache throughout the land. Time for America to take a stand. For all of those people taken away, we send our thoughts and prayers every day.
Well, we also have some other news. Home Depot is also helping out. Stores nationwide are collecting donations for the victims and their families. Home Depot is also giving American flags and black ribbons for each donation. The ribbons and flags are to remember, obviously, those who have lost their lives. Locally, Corning Incorporated has donated $200,000 to support the relief fund. Half of it will go to the rescue workers. The other half will go to the Red Cross. HSBC and key banks are also setting up accounts to help the Red Cross and the Salvation Army. Well, if you are just joining us, we now want to recap for you some of the late developments both nationally and here locally.
Well, the top floors of a 53-story skyscraper began buckling this afternoon. You're looking at a live picture of the New York City skyline. You see the cloud of smoke there still coming up from the area. One Liberty Plaza is a block from where the Twin Towers had stood. Some rescue workers were forced to evacuate that building. And meanwhile, 2 New York City firefighters were brought out alive from the carnage there. They fell into an underground pocket under the Trade Center debris earlier today. One firefighter was overcome by pride when describing the scene at the epicenter.
Guys are digging out. People are helping out. There are a lot of volunteers. And everywhere you go, people are trying, looking for hope, and knowing that people are still alive in that rubble and not giving up. And they're working 48 and 72 hours in a row, and everyone's exhausted, and they take a 5-minute break, and they're right back in there.
Meanwhile, New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani says 4,800 people are now reported missing. President Bush will be in New York City tomorrow.
The nation's airspace is back open tonight, but here in Rochester, no commercial flights are going in or out of the airport. Officials hope that flights will resume tomorrow morning. And be aware, there will be tighter security measures in place. There will be no curbside check-ins anymore, and no electronic tickets will be allowed without documentation. We are learning today that there are more people with ties to Rochester who are killed or are still missing in the rubble. We'll hear from their friends and families coming up in just a moment. And the White House and the Red Cross are asking people to donate blood tonight. You should call the local Red Cross to make an appointment. The phone number there, 1-800-GIVE-LIFE. Well, we've learned of 2 men who were aboard the hijacked planes and others who are still waiting for word about loved ones missing. Gary Libertor joins us now live from the newsroom with the very latest on that. Gary?
Brian, Jeremy Glick of New Jersey, a 1993 graduate of the University of Rochester, was on the plane that went down in Pennsylvania. Also, a 1977 graduate of RIT was on the plane, or one of the planes, that crashed into the World Trade Center.
There's Daddy. Daddy Phil and Daddy Jeff.
A couple of shots in a home video and a couple of pictures. Besides memories, that's all Jan Waxman has left of one of her best friends, Phil Rosenzweig.
He's just a wonderful person. He's a great dad.
The 1977 graduate of RIT and current resident of the Boston area was on American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles that crashed into the World Trade Center. Jan and her husband met Phil and his wife years ago when they too lived in Massachusetts.
I had a very difficult morning, and of course speaking with her this morning was hard. You hear a voice that is just living a nightmare.
This is my cousin Philip, who's in, he's a firefighter that's not found yet.
Joanne Cerconi of Greece is going through what so many are. She's waiting to hear word of her cousin. New York City firefighter Phil Petty is still alive. She says he was with one of the first crews to arrive on the scene.
Ironically, his mom and dad, my aunt and uncle, came here for a visit this week. They got here Sunday, learned about the situation Monday, and they left yesterday morning to drive back.
24-year-old Rochelle Snell worked on the 99th floor of Tower 2. Her brother lives in Rochester.
What we're all hoping for is that she's maybe unconscious, or maybe she's just hurt and unable to call or something like that. But what I'm praying for is that she's alive.
Obviously, words we are hearing from throughout our area, as well as throughout the country. And Gabe and Brian, it just seems like there are just so many families here locally who have ties to these terrorist acts. Reporting live from the newsroom, Gary Liberatore, News 10, NBC.
All right, Gary, thank you very much. And we've just learned one of the victims killed at the Pentagon is from Nunde. Brett Davidson is live tonight in the nation's capital. Brett?
Well, Gabe, I can tell you that the Defense Department says that the number of dead or unaccounted for over at the Pentagon now stands at 190. Among them, 37-year-old Navy Commander William Donovan, Jr. of Nunde. He has yet to be found. Tonight, though, train crews are going into the rubble in shifts, and they're hoping for the best. Here at the Pentagon today, rescue and recovery crews move deeper into the destruction. It is a complicated search through thousands of tons of concrete rubble, and it's evolving every hour.
When they go in and do primary searches, they're looking initially for anything obvious as far as a potential victim alive. Then they're marking areas of likely void spaces, and also they're marking areas that probably need to have some shoring and some reinforcement.
But as these teams work feverishly this morning, a bomb threat forces them to retreat, and an evacuation is ordered for the area.
I would just simply advise people that we're all in a position where we have to take plausible threats as credible threats. So we're going to see this happen more than once.
Once back at it, crews are using dogs and high-tech equipment. Climbing through that rubble are specially trained urban search and rescue teams who have been through this before. Many took part in the recovery efforts in Oklahoma City.
But there's also thermal imaging cameras being employed, listening devices that hopefully could even hear somebody breathing or potential heartbeat. There's fiber optic cameras that can get into spaces that somebody physically can't get into and see.
But the job is mostly grim as firefighters locate bodies and body parts. Still, these specialized teams work on the premise that someone inside may still be alive.
Is alive. There is hope. We are in a search and rescue mode. These guys are determined. These men and women are really, they're thinking about finding people alive. They're not thinking about recovery.
Local authorities, though, are less hopeful.
Rescue workers obviously are still very hopeful, and we continue to want them to be hopeful. But in reality, we're in the modes and operations that we're taking it's more of a recovery phase.
All right, that was Brett Davidson reporting for us live from Washington, D.C. And as we mentioned to you at the beginning of his report, one of the victims killed at the Pentagon is from Nunde. He is Navy Commander William Donovan. He was 37 years old, again from Nunde. There may be some good news tonight for air travelers in Rochester. The airport may open tonight for incoming flights only. Ray Lovato joins us live from the airport. Ray, what's the timetable looking like at this point?
Well, the airport today was closed for a third day, but we did find out a short time ago that the airport is expected to reopen this evening, perhaps in about 2 hours, and there will be 4 incoming flights at this point, 2 Delta flights and 2 U.S. Airways. Now, the airport still needs FAA certification, meaning the FAA needs to be satisfied that security changes have been made. That is expected to happen by about 7:30, 8 o'clock this evening. One of those requirements is moving all vehicles at least 300 feet away from the terminal. The parking garage is about 200 feet away, so tow trucks were busy today relocating parked vehicles to other parking areas. Now, let's go right to our interview now with the airport administrator, who says that passengers who have ticket needs should wait until tomorrow before coming out here.
With the public, we don't want passengers coming to the airport tonight for departures. There aren't going to be any, and we would encourage the public not to come to the airport tonight for ticket information or to expect the ticket counters open, because most of the airlines will not staff ticket counters until first thing tomorrow morning.
And that should be about 5:30, 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Now, the airport did get permission for planes to relocate here today. There was one jet that flew out to Columbus, and there was one jet that flew here from Buffalo, a JetBlue aircraft. Reporting live from the airport, Ray Lovato, News 10 NBC.
Ray, we're told that there will be increased sheriff's patrols at the airport. Do we know how many more deputies?
Well, the sheriff would not give exact numbers. Usually police don't do that. But he said that you will see more uniformed officers here and also police dogs. And as for the cost, the county executive said that he's going to give the sheriff whatever he needs. And if I could just add, someone said today that they heard from a friend that perhaps a flight attendant they know might not be coming back to work. I posed that question to Terry Slaybaugh. He looked at me and he said, who knows who's going to want to fly after this? So time will tell.
Point. Ray Lovato reporting live. Thank you. And there are a limited number of flights at the Buffalo airport tonight. A U.S. Airways plane landed just last hour. Some airlines like JetBlue and Southwest will not have any flights today or tonight.
Well, people all across our area are looking for ways that they can help out. Wegmans has now started a new checkout campaign to raise money for relief efforts. Deborah Boxty joins us live from a store in Chili with more on that. Deborah?
Well, Brian, many customers heading through these checkout lines here are paying for more than their groceries. Take a look over here. They're chipping in cash for Red Cross disaster relief efforts. Many say all it takes is a small amount to help ease the pain of a tragedy that's come at such a high price.
Do you want to donate $1 to the Red Cross or more? Or?
Yeah, $10.
$10 to the Red Cross? Alrighty.
This man is just one of many people around the area opening their pocketbooks and their hearts in this time of need.
Oh, I think it's a wonderful program. Anything that anybody can do to help under the circumstances is truly appreciated.
Would you like to donate to the Red Cross? Yes. How much would you like to donate? $1.
Cashiers are asking customers if they want to help out. There's no pressure to do so, yet many people feel it's the least they can do.
Why wouldn't you want to help at least a little bit? You know, living this distance away, there's not a lot we can do, so that would be just a small thing.
Some people are giving $1, others $10, $20, $50, even $100. Wegmans just wanted to provide a way for local people to help out.
I think we all feel like we need to do something. We individually and then as a company, you just feel compelled to help in some way.
The money will go directly to help the families of victims in New York and Washington, as search efforts will likely continue for weeks to come.
I'm sure that the people that are in control of the money will put it to good use. Wherever it goes, I'm sure it's well needed.
Now, this checkout campaign will continue for 2 weeks at all Wegmans locations. So far at this store alone, customers have donated more than $3,000 already, and it just started this morning. Reporting live in Chili, Deborah Boxty, News 10 NBC.
All right, Deborah, thanks very much. Turning now to weather, I guess there's talk or chance, a possibility of some rain, I guess, hitting the New York City area tonight.
It's definitely coming, and I think it'll be kind of both a boon and a bane. It will help to settle some of the dust and cleanse that terribly dusty air, but it might create some mud concerns, too.
Which one's better, right?
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that, but rain is coming there. We'll talk about that and our weather. It's going to get very chilly around here, and so let's get right to it. Over at the 10 NBC Weather Lab.
Now, here's the latest weather from the News 10 NBC Weather Lab.
And here is indeed the rain we were talking about on the 10 NBC Weather Lab Triple Doppler. These are actually some decent thunderstorms south of Binghamton now, heading to the east and south. Here, nothing going on locally, but there are a few showers beginning to develop around Genesee County and points west. That rain shower activity will overspread the region, especially south of town, as we move through the late evening and overnight hours. Might be a few water spouts around as the wind begins to whistle and some late October-like conditions move in. We've been dropping all afternoon, 70 degrees earlier in the city. It's 62 now. And let's talk about conditions first for the rescue and recovery efforts in New York City, Washington, and for that matter, Pittsburgh as well. All enjoyed sunshine today or experienced sunshine today, but we do have some rain coming in for later tonight into tomorrow, and some of the rain could be hefty in the New York City area. Things will improve markedly, though, there this weekend. We do anticipate sunshine to return to those regions for both Saturday and for Sunday. We're watching a couple of systems in the Atlantic, hurricanes Erin and Felix way out. There's Erin right there. Also going to watch, though, the possible development of tropical storm, now tropical storm Gabrielle, that could become a hurricane, and a major one at that, affecting the eastern Gulf states and perhaps riding along the eastern seaboard next week. And that'll be an evolving situation. We'll have more on that over the next day or so. Today, at least for a while, we did see some sun. Interesting, with a stiff wind out of the north at the surface, the cumulus clouds are moving from north to south, but just above that layer, the winds are from the west-southwest, so the tops of those cumulus clouds are blowing the other way toward the east. But clouds are thickening across the region now. It's cloudy in town. A few sprinkles on the west side, 62 degrees at the airport, a brisk breeze out of the north-northwest. Temperatures now have cooled down into the 60s. They'll cool further and likely not recover in many areas out of the 50s tomorrow, so the little ones will need jackets, I think, at the bus stop when the breeze tomorrow morning will be out of the north at 20 or 25 miles an hour. It's going to feel mighty chilly. There is a front that came through this morning, a few showers. We need more than that, though. We're again back in a drought situation, but another disturbance riding the jet will bring some showers tonight, especially to the south, and then it'll clear out as we head on into the weekend. So there's the front I mentioned. It moves south and east, and behind it, the chilliest air since May will head our way. Temperatures drop into the 30s in the southern valleys. Tomorrow night could be a light frost in the deepest valleys south of 5 and 20 by Saturday morning, but that high does spell a bright, sunny weekend. So our forecast for tonight, lots of clouds, increasingly windy, some showers developing in the coming hours, the low 47. Early tomorrow morning, it's going to look and feel like early November. Lots of dark clouds, a couple showers, then the sun breaks through, but the high only 58. Your weekend looks bright, but quite cool, with highs in the low to mid-60s. Temperatures do moderate. It warms up into the low to mid-70s then early next week as we watch to see what future Hurricane Gabrielle does for the eastern seaboard.
Okay, Kevin, thanks.
The New York City skyline, of course, has changed forever. We've been watching the horrific images on TV, but an RIT graduate only has to look out her window to see the massive destruction. Shelley Urbando is in Manhattan tonight. She joins us live with this woman's story. Shelley?
Gabe, there's been a more regular flow of traffic up and down the streets of Manhattan today. Many people returning to work for the first time, but under a much different New York City skyline. We spoke to a woman earlier who's a graduate of RIT and lives in New York now. She says she feels a loss of connection when she looks up, expecting to see the Twin Towers. All she sees now is an empty space filled with smoke, but she remembers the last time she did see it.
I like to come in that way because you get a shot of the Statue of Liberty, and then you get the whole skyline. And my boyfriend usually sleeps on the way in, but luckily he was awake, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad you're awake, because look at it. It's gorgeous. It was one of those crystal clear nights where you could just see everything. And we had just a short discussion about it, because I said, you know, no matter how conflicted I ever feel about living in New York, I just, you know, it's like any time when you come home, you just, you see it. I really feel that this is my home, and I'm a New Yorker, and if I'm needed here in any way, I want to be here.
And many feeling the need to be here. We spoke earlier with state troopers from Rochester, and we'll hear from them tonight coming up new at 11. Reporting live from New York City, Shelley Urbando, News 10 NBC.
All right, Shelley, thank you very much. Of course, people want to do whatever they can to reach out to the victims and their families. A local farm market is raising money for the children of firefighters killed in New York City. Wendy Wright joins us now live from Amon's on Ridge Road. Wendy?
Well, Gabe, these are the types of things you normally see at a farm market, the plants and the flowers. But here at Amon's Farm Market on East Ridge Road in Arundecoit, you're going to see something extra tonight. And it's something the folks here will really hope that they make a big difference in this tragedy. What you're seeing is a jar here where people can come and they can donate some money. This money will go to the children of the firefighters in this tragedy. In fact, we have a couple little boys who have just come in with their dad who are going to throw some money in right now. What's your name?
Evan.
What's your name?
I'm Gallic.
Well, that's very nice of you to help some little kids, probably the same age as you. These are the children who had a father or a mother who was a firefighter who went into the World Trade Center really moments before it collapsed. They were trying to help rescue the innocent people. So what they're doing here at Ammons is they're collecting some money. The money will go directly to the children and to the families of these firefighters to help secure a financial future for them. Now, Patty Ammons' husband is a firefighter at the Ridge Culver Fire Department, and she says that if he died in the line of duty and left her with her 2 children, then she would really be left with a lot of financial difficulties.
Those children need to be supported later on in their lives. A lot of them are small. They need to think about education and just basic housing and clothes and anything else a little kid needs growing up. And I know this isn't going to fix it. I only intend to try to help it.
Also, Patty's father-in-law and her grandfather were also firefighters during their career. At this point, it's really not known how many children are affected by this, but estimates are that hundreds of children could have been left behind. In fact, Patty says that she heard of one firefighter alone who left 10 children. Reporting live from the farm market, Wendy Wright, News 10 NBC.
This, of course, has extended our communal family in so many ways, and it's good to see that. All right, Wendy, thank you.
Fear and anxiety, it's what so many people are feeling tonight. Help is available for those people wanting confidential help in dealing with the tragedy in New York City and Washington. Medical reporter Robin DeWin joins us live from our newsroom with more on that. Robin?
Well, Brian, Lifeline is a crisis hotline offering confidential help to those people in need. Director Bob Bond says that there's been a growing number of people who are calling in for support and referral services. Lifeline is a health association operation. Our local office is also taking calls from a 1-800 number to help those people in the New York City area since Lifeline services there have been overwhelmed. Bond says they're receiving calls from people who normally wouldn't call in for support.
You're going to have to take all your baggage to the ticket counters to check in. You're going to have to be ticketed to go down the concourses.
All right, obviously that wasn't Bob Bond, but we want to give you the Lifeline number. It is open 24 hours a day. You can call 275-5151, and the TTY number is 275-2700. Bond says right after Tuesday's tragedy, the phone lines were unusually quiet, but as people began to absorb what had happened, they began to call in. They wanted to talk, how to talk to their children, what they could do to help, and also how they could deal with their own sense of loss. Well, people continue to donate blood today. More than 1,100 units of blood have been sent from Rochester to the New York City area since Tuesday. You're asked to call 1-800-GIVE-LIFE to make an appointment that will allow blood donation centers to run smoothly without long lines. All blood types are needed. The Red Cross wants to remind people that they will continue to have a need for blood in the coming weeks, so if you can't get in either tomorrow or over the weekend, there's always next week and the following week. Reporting live from the newsroom, medical reporter Robin DeWin, News 10 NBC.
Robin, many local schools are raising money for the relief efforts in New York and Washington. Education reporter Elizabeth Schernak joins us now with more on tonight's Project Education. Elizabeth?
Gabe, high school students in particular have been watching just about as much television as you or I the last couple of days. Of course, for them, the images they are seeing are being followed up by discussions in the classroom. But now many of them feel an itch to help out. At Fairport High School, students knew it was impractical to drive down to New York City, so they decided to raise money. The Student Council has challenged students to raise $5,000 in 2 days. Today is just the first day, and already students have raised more than $3,000. Money from part-time jobs and allowance.
My brother worked in a building that was right next to the World Trade Center, and his building's gone now. I've heard people's aunts, uncles, fathers. I mean, just so many people had so many connections down there that they just really want to help all they can.
The money from Fairport High School will go to the American Red Cross, who will then decide how to best spend it. Students are also considering donating money to a school in New York City that was damaged by all of the destruction. In Greece, students at Buckman Heights Elementary School are collecting pennies for the American Red Cross. A third grader started this campaign after watching the news on television. Jared Sangiorgi wanted to help out, especially since people have helped his school out when it was burned by arson just a few months ago.
So we can help the injured people and all kinds of people that injured, killed, buildings that were struck or fell because they're weak.
Jared and his friends at Buckman Heights have already raised more than $40 in pennies. With Project Education, Elizabeth Schernak, News 10 NBC.
Well, tonight the county legislature will endorse legislation encouraging all citizens to fly the American flag in a show of support. A flag store called Stars and Stripes has sold thousands of handheld flags. Chase Pitkin and other hardware stores have also sold out. People want to show their patriotism in this time of crisis.
But there is, I'm so proud to be an American, and I just feel it's so important that we show our patriotism right now.
It's hard to know what to do, and this is something we all can do, is fly our flag and show our support.
Monroe County Executive Jack Doyle is putting out a call for local churches to ring their bells for 5 minutes beginning at noon tomorrow.
I hope the legislature doesn't restrict the displaying of flags just to citizens.
Right,
Anyone
anybody
who lives in this country, I would
Absolutely.
assume. The NFL has made its decision about games this weekend. Rich Monkey's joining us now.
All right, Gabe, and I think they made the right one. There will be no pro football this weekend. The Bills-Miami game and 14 other games have been called off by the NFL in the wake of Tuesday's attacks in New York and Washington. Rick Hager was in Orchard Park this afternoon when the Bills got the news.
Rich, the Bills obviously agree Sunday's game should be canceled. In fact, there is some belief that players across the league were ready to apply pressure to stop the games if they had not been canceled. And here is the Bills' reaction to the NFL decision.
I know the Jets and the Giants weren't going to play. I think Washington wasn't going to play. So it was good that they didn't put us in the situation where they told us to play, and then we'd have to vote as players whether we wanted to or not.
How are you going to play in the Meadowlands when you got people under rubble? I mean, that's just not very sensitive. That's why I say the NFL, you know, put the business aside. They really showed a personal side today, I think, and I think they made a really good decision.
It would have been very difficult to focus on these games when we all know what's going on in this country.
We are extremely supportive of the league's decision to not play the games this weekend.
Bills owner Ralph Wilson released this statement saying, "I feel it is the absolute right decision by the NFL to postpone games this weekend. I feel that to play the games would have shown great insensitivity to this national tragedy." And it has been learned that Mr. Wilson was in Washington, D.C. at the time of the attacks, and the Bills are not commenting on a report that says Mr. Wilson was, in fact, in or near the Pentagon when it was struck. In Orchard Park, Rick Hager, News 10 NBC.
Okay, Rick, the Bills will practice tomorrow, then take the weekend off. Their next game is at Indianapolis a week from Sunday. I do think it's the right move. You think about all that has happened, plus the logistics, certainly, of moving players from site to site. And football, of course, is not a game that you play half-heartedly. Here's a sampling of the coffee shop reaction to the NFL's decision to cancel the weekend.
It's too close to the tragedy that just happened a few days ago. So I agree with the decision to postpone it.
I think we should concentrate on the people and help them, but I don't think canceling a football game is going to make matters better.
It's a great move to cancel the games. We can't be having fun in games while people are out dying and still under rubble, possibly living.
I think that everyone should be focusing on the tragedy in New York City and in Washington, D.C., and that all the people that died and the lives are more important than sports are.
It's like hard to think about sports or recreation or, you know, my job, anything.
The league still hasn't agreed on what to do about the games that are being wiped out on Sunday. There are three options. Play a 15-game schedule with players losing a week's pay, play this week's game on Wild Card weekend, and cut the playoff wild cards in each conference from 3 to 1. Basically, you would eliminate Wild Card weekend, which makes the most sense to me, or juggle the bye weeks, which seems the least likely. We'll certainly find out. The Canadian Football League will play this weekend. About 180 players and 10 head coaches in the CFL are Americans. Major League Baseball has decided to postpone its games through Sunday, but it will not affect the divisional races or Barry Bonds' chase of Mark McGwire's home run record. Baseball will extend the regular season to make up all of those games, and that will push the World Series into November. Other postponements, the New Hampshire 300 NASCAR race, which now will be run the day after Thanksgiving, weather permitting. College football has done an about-face. The SEC, Big Ten, and Big 12 have all decided to reschedule games this weekend. MLS soccer has scrubbed its last 6 games. They'll go directly to the playoffs. And the LPGA tournament set for this weekend in Portland has been canceled along with the PGA events. The Ryder Cup is still on for September 28th at the Belfry, at least for now, but a number of U.S. golfers have their concerns about flying to London, and organizers spent much of today discussing security for that. And that's sports.
I tell you, a A lot of people wringing their hands and wondering what was going to happen. And baseball in November. I mean, that's going to be something.
Yeah, at Yankee Stadium probably.
Yeah.
Well, the stock market will resume trading on Monday. Stock market officials will do a test of the market system Saturday to be sure that trading can, in fact, move forward. The financial markets have resumed bond trading. We've received hundreds of emails from you.
Yeah, we want to share some of those emails with you right now. Peter from Australia writes, I was watching the movie Titanic on video around 11 p.m. Tuesday night, Australian Eastern Standard Time. When it finished around 1 a.m. Wednesday, the TV on every channel had breaking news about the tragedy. After watching the tragedy of Titanic and then switching over to this live action real-life news, I could not believe it. I watched for an hour, but it just wouldn't sink in. I thought I was dreaming. It wasn't until the next morning when I kept seeing it on every channel that it started to sink in. Once again, I am deeply sorry for all the families and friends of those involved, and I wish them all the best. Love and friendship to all.
Danielle and Tracy write, we want to share our point of view as teenagers, facing things we've never seen in our life. We think it's horrible that people could do this to anybody. We believe we should find these people and make them pay for the grief they've caused us Americans. When we found out in school, we were shocked and thought it was a bad dream that we could not wake up from. God bless, and our deepest condolences to all the families who lost loved ones.
And Maria writes, I believe that the only thing we Americans can do now is hope. We can hope for peace and justice. We can hope for understanding and forgiveness. We can hope for the ability to look at our glorious stars and stripes and know that we as a country will overcome this mass tragedy. Nightly News is up next. Tom Brokaw will have an hour-long edition with the very latest developments. And at 7:30, join us for a News 10 NBC special report. We would like to hear what you think. We invite you to call us and share your thoughts and comments with us live on the air. Just call the number on the bottom of your screen, 325-4444.
Of course, this horrible tragedy is beginning to hit home. We're learning of many people locally who have relatives and friends who were victims, and it's just going to get worse for the next few minutes and days. Thank you for watching. Good night.